Hi guys, it's me, Chazza HD, and welcome to Race Day at the Circuit of the Americas, one of the best racetracks on the calendar, consistently provides us with great racing every single year. And I don't think it's going to be any different today. If you saw the sprint race from yesterday, even though I do hate the sprints, it was a pretty good one, and we had plenty of great racing. And given the grid makeup we have as well, in terms of who is where on the grid, I'd be very surprised if this was a boring race. Very, very surprised. It is going to be a fun race. We're going to have many battles for the win, for the podium, for the points. Obviously, got a couple cars out of position from the back that will be making their way through the field. More on that in the build-up. It's going to be a good race. There is no doubt about that. And I hope you guys are as pumped up for it as I am. Because, again, this race, it never disappoints. I can't remember a race here that was genuinely boring. We've always had great racing here at the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. And obviously, bumper crowd as usual. And it should be a great one. Hope you guys are doing well. Obviously, qualifying late last night happened and was a decent session. It was very anticlimactic in the end, with the yellow flag for George Russell's crash at the end of the session. Russell, by the way, will be starting from the pit lane for today's Grand Prix because I think, after the crash, they lost the upgrades, Mercedes, on his car, and have decided to just do something different, I think, as well, with the setup for Russell. So both Mercedes starting 17th and last for today's Grand Prix. Quite incredible given how the weekend started, where they looked so incredibly quick. And we'll get into more as to why their weekend has turned out this way later on. But yeah, hope you guys are well. Hope you're as excited as I am. And I hope you'll join me today in watching along and enjoying the 2024 US Grand Prix. If you can't watch the race, but you want to keep up to date with it, this is the place to be, where I'll keep you bang up to date with everything going on in the race itself. And of course, as usual, in the chat, there is a poll running where I've asked you, who do you think will win today's US Grand Prix? Will it be Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Carlos Sainz, or Charles Leclerc? Out of those four, who do you think wins today's Grand Prix? That poll will keep running probably for the next hour and 45 minutes. And then you guys, we'll see what your thoughts are on that right before the race begins. Another thing to say quickly is, unfortunately, my co-commentator Niblo cannot join us tonight because the timing of the race for him is just not good enough for him to be on. He will, though, be back on soon enough. Definitely be back on before the end of the season. Probably the next time he'll be on will be for the Las Vegas Grand Prix, which is in about a month from now, where for that race, I'm probably going to do just a race watch along, given the timings of those sessions not being great for me. So, yeah, he will be back. And obviously for the final race, he'll be on as well in Abu Dhabi. So it'll just be solo for today. But yeah, let's get into this build-up to the Grand Prix, where obviously we're going to go through what happened yesterday, the data from yesterday, to understand why things have turned out the way they have. Obviously, we'll get into the pace and the data from the sprint race, because the sprint race, thankfully, spoiled what the race pace from all the teams is like. So we know pretty much what to expect for this US Grand Prix. So we'll get into that. And obviously, we'll go through the predicted race strategy that Pirelli have said is the best strategy for this race. We'll go through all of that stuff before lights out in Austin. Talking of the weather, by the way, the weather should be okay. I've not actually checked it at all, because normally the weather is absolutely fantastic in Austin. But let me just have a quick check. And yeah, it is 30 degrees Celsius, sunny with a very light breeze. So perfect weather for the United States Grand Prix, as usual. But let's get into what happened in qualifying. And again, it was a big anticlimax, the end of the session, where we were in for a really good end to that session and a good fight for pole. But sadly, George Russell had his crash. Thankfully, was okay, but it ended up spoiling what was going to be a fun end to qualifying like we usually get here in Austin. But it means that Lando Norris will start for the fourth time in the last 5 races. He will start on pole position, just ahead of Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. Now, Lando, definitely a bit lucky to be on pole, but everyone knows that yellow flags on the final lap of qualifying are possible. So at the end of the day, Lando, he delivered the better lap in those first runs. So he prepared himself best for that eventuality. So we can't, say he was absolutely massively lucky, because the lap he did was good. It just wasn't, I don't think, the potentially best lap that anyone could have done in Q3. And I do believe that Max Verstappen would have got pole had it not been for that yellow flag, and probably would have done a 32-1 or a 32-0 if it had not been for the yellow. But that's the way things are. But thankfully for Verstappen, he is in still a good position on the grid. Carlos Sainz in third. What a day he had yesterday. The sprint race, he finished in second. And third, out-qualifying his teammate as well. So brilliant job by Sainz. And good to see him back up there, beating his teammate for the first time in quite a while. I did see something funny on Twitter, or X as it's now known as, that whenever Carlos Sainz beats Leclerc, everyone then says, oh, Carlos, what an underrated driver he is. And this will always happen after a series of races where Leclerc has comfortably beaten Carlos Sainz. So, Carlos is having a great weekend, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Carlos has not really been anywhere in the races leading up to this. But still, good performance this weekend, and he might be able to be a contender to win this race, but it really depends on certain factors, which I'll get onto later with Ferrari, if they are going to be race-winning contenders. Leclerc in fourth, Ferrari third and fourth on the grid. I think they would have been pretty happy with that if you offered them that grid position coming into the weekend. So, yeah, I think they'll be very happy with that. Piastri fifth, 0.6 of a second away from his teammate. Definitely lacking a lot in performances, Piastri, this weekend. But as we saw last year, Oscar is just not that great around this track. This is not one of his better tracks. So that is contributing to why he is so far off. And honestly, I would be surprised if Oscar finished on the podium today. He's going to have to do something quite incredible to end up on the podium, because the pace of the cars ahead is, looking quite a bit better than him. George Russell qualified in 6th place, but of course will be now starting from the pit lane. So it will be Pierre Gasly 6th on the grid and on the 3rd row. What an effort by him. For me, he was the driver of the day yesterday. Brilliant job by Gasly. And as we'll get into in a moment with the sector time data, I think that performance by Alpine absolutely is influenced by the upgrades that they have brought this weekend. So Alpine, good to see that they've made a step up in improvement and might be a factor in the rest of this season. And there is still things for Alpine to fight for this year. They're only 3 points behind Williams in the championship. So, season's not dead and buried for them. And then Alonso will be 7th on the grid. Alonso lucky to be 7th on the grid, because not only with Russell starting from the pit lane, but also that yellow flag prevented Alonso from ending up where he was going to end up, which was P10. So Alonso lucky to be on the fourth row of the grid, and Fernando was pretty unhappy after qualifying with the feeling of the car. So I think even he knows that he's pretty lucky to be that high on the grid. Kevin Magnussen will be 8th on the grid. Haas didn't have a great day yesterday, considering their pace in the sprint and in sprint qualifying as well was phenomenal. And they do have, I still believe, the best pace of any midfield team. They just didn't deliver it quite in qualifying. But in the race today, I think they should be, again, the best of the rest. And then Sergio Perez ended up P10, not doing a lap time because obviously the last runs were all compromised, and his first run was deleted for a track limit violation. But Perez will start the race from 9th. And then it'll be Tsunoda in 10th, which was around where he started the sprint race. Tsunoda's had a good weekend. Hulkenberg, disappointing in qualifying, but again, Haas have got good race pace, so I think Hulkenberg should be finishing in the top 10 today. Ocon in 13th, I think, proving that Alpine definitely have stepped up a gear, clearly, compared to where they were before this upgrade. Stroll in 14th, poor effort from him. He should have been at least, I think, 11th, 12th at the absolute worst. 14th is just poor, but thankfully for him, he'll be starting a place higher in 13th. Liam Lawson didn't do a lap time in Q2 because he's got a grid penalty anyway, so it didn't matter what he did in qualifying, and that's why he was providing a tow to Tsunoda in qualifying, because obviously Lawson was going to start at the back anyway. So it will be Alexander Albon in, in 14th place, and then Franco Colapinto will be 15th, with Bottas 16th. Lewis Hamilton will start 17th, and then it'll be Zhou 18th, Lawson 19th, and then George Russell will be 20th and starting from the pit lane. With Lewis Hamilton, setup issues he did have in qualifying, and he did complain about that after the session, but I don't care about those setup issues in terms of what actually happened. It's not like he was about 2 or 3 tenths slower than he should have been, and was maybe 7th or 8th in qualifying, and the setup cost him. Even with those setup changes, he should still be getting out of Q1. No doubt about it. For him to end up almost qualifying last was a pathetic effort. Again, the setup changes, I don't think can explain most of why Lewis Hamilton was so poor. He has to take a good deal of responsibility for why he ended up where he did, which is why with this season, there's been a big portion of Mercedes fans complaining that Lewis Hamilton, the reason he's been poor in qualifying this year is because of Mercedes messing around with his setup. Maybe at times, the setup's not been quite right. But as I've said before, he has got to take responsibility for, his own performance, regardless of the setup changes that he might not like. Because even if the car isn't exactly to your liking, you should still be performing around about, the level you're expected to be at, considering obviously the pace of the car. And obviously, 19th on the grid is not where Mercedes expect to be with the car they have. They need to be at least getting into the top 10. So, I'm afraid that excuse doesn't quite wash for me this weekend. Again, unhappy with the setup, but he still didn't perform well enough, and that is the fact of the matter. And what is even more baffling with Hamilton is complained about the setup, yet he's not starting from the pit lane. Why not? If the setup is that bad, why not just start from the pit lane and change his setup? No, I really don't get it. There's nothing to lose from starting from the pit lane. He's starting 17th on the grid. So I just don't understand why Hamilton is, starting where he is and not starting from the pit lane if the setup is that big of an issue for him. But, that's the way it is. And that's where Lewis Hamilton is starting from. We'll see how his race goes. But I think for him, the aim has just got to be getting the top 10, no matter where it is in the top 10. I can see him having a very similar race to what he had in Singapore. Not Singapore, sorry, Baku, where obviously started low down on the grid that day and didn't really have any speed until like the midway point of the race, and then he actually started to come through the field, but was always low down through the race. I think we're probably going to see a similar race for him today. But yeah, those are the qualifying results from yesterday. And obviously later on, right before the race, we will go through the starting grid. But let's get into the sector times, just to understand why it ended up the way it did. And the first sector, even though Red Bull did not get pole, the first sector to me proves clearly that Red Bull have the best car this weekend. Because the first sector is all about downforce. Downforce is really what you need to be quick here. Yeah, the back straight is very important, having a lot of straight line speed for that to keep up, good speed. But really, it's about downforce here. And Red Bull in the first sector, not only the quickest, but by a pretty big margin, considering it was only 24.8 seconds for the first sector. A tenth and a half quicker than the next car being the Ferrari of Sainz and the McLaren just behind. McLaren, as we've said this weekend, they have got some sort of issue going on. I know there might be some conspiracy saying, McLaren have had to change some part of their car to appease the FIA. There's not enough evidence to prove that and to prove that that is why, McLaren have had a drop-off of pace. But they have had a clear drop-off of pace this weekend. There is no doubt about that. At the last Grand Prix in Singapore, they obliterated everyone. And given how quick they were there, they should be coming here and dominating as well. But they're not. They look to have maybe not even the second fastest car. Maybe you could say the third fastest car, especially in race trim. So, yeah, there is something up at McLaren. I think it is probably the upgrades they've brought just haven't meshed correctly with the rest of the car, and they haven't found a way to get the best out of those upgrades yet in terms of finding the right setup and stuff like that. So, that's what I think is going on at McLaren. But Red Bull, on the other hand, have gone the other way. They've brought an upgrade this weekend, and because of a better setup, that's allowed Red Bull to get back to the levels we saw them at back in May, June, and July to a certain extent. So, yeah, that's why Red Bull have been quickest this weekend, and maybe you could say from now on, Red Bull are now maybe the team to beat. We'll have to see, obviously, going forward, because you don't know how things are going to change when we go to Mexico City next weekend and then Interlagos the week after. But Red Bull certainly look back to their absolute best form. Ferrari looking competitive as well, good to see, but still not the best. And then Alpine, fourth best in the first sector. And for me, that clearly proves that their upgrades have worked. Because if they didn't, I don't see how they would be anywhere near the fourth best team in this part of the track. And as you'll see later on, they were pretty quick in other parts of the track as well. So that upgrade clearly working for the Alpine team. And as I said, they can keep this up, then they should be a factor in the midfield going forward for these last few races. Mercedes, though, I think are the real story of this first sector data, because on Friday in sprint qualifying, Lewis Hamilton did out 24.714 it was for the first sector. Now, if George Russell had done that yesterday, in qualifying, then Mercedes would be still a tenth of a second clear of the next best car in the first sector. So Mercedes quite literally lost pace from Friday to Saturday. They were, what, 3.5 tenths of a second slower in the first sector yesterday than they were compared to Friday. And even George Russell said on the radio that he didn't understand why the car was so different compared to what it was like on Friday. The only thing I can think of is the temperature difference compared to Friday, where on Friday it was a lot cooler. We do know that Mercedes do tend to perform better in cooler conditions. So that's the only explanation I have. I mean, they brought a few upgrades this weekend. I don't think it's that's the issue, because from what I've heard, Mercedes feel as though those upgrades have improved the car, especially in slow speed corners. So it's not that; it must be the temperature difference, and obviously they're not going to be helped today with it being like 90 degrees Fahrenheit and it being a very hot day. So that's probably what the issue is. I'd be surprised if the upgrades actually don't work, because I mean Mercedes literally come out and said that they have worked for them, and I do believe them. I don't know. I don't see why they would lie about that. So yeah, just quite incredible that a temperature difference of a few degrees can lose a team, a few tenths of a second on the track. But it does show you how, even if it's dry all weekend, if the temperature varies all weekend, it does make a difference to the performance of the cars. Absolutely. So, yeah, interesting to see that. I think a clear example, if that is indeed the case with Mercedes, as to that being the issue that's causing them to be slower, I think this is a very good example of how temperature differences, even in the dry, can have a massive effect on certain teams' ability in, in certain conditions. So, yeah, interesting to see that. Yuki Tsunoda then, after that, Racing Bulls, decent pace in the first sector. Haas, not quite as good through the first sector as they were in sprint qualifying, but still decent enough. Williams, not great. Aston Martin, nowhere near good enough. For them to be one of the worst teams through that sector, it's just, again, simply nowhere near the level they should be at. But we saw the same in sprint qualifying, where Aston Martin once again had one of the slowest cars in Sector 1. And even though they've brought basically a new car worth of upgrades, once again, they have done jack shit. Aston Martin have massive issues when it comes to development. And as I said, when they signed Adrian Newey, which was, a few weeks ago, obviously Adrian won't be starting until next spring. But until they fix this issue with development and the upgrades they bring actually working, it doesn't matter what Adrian does. Because, if the car is not able to improve over the course of a season, again, it does not matter how the car is at the start of the season. If this is the way it's going to go. And then Sauber at the very back, no surprise about that. Middle sector, you've got some slow corners, and obviously the long back straight. McLaren very quick through the middle sector, which is impressive. Obviously, we do have to remember the final runs in Q3 didn't happen for a lot of people, so we didn't get necessarily the absolute best middle sector times for everyone. But these are the best middle sector times we got anyway. And McLaren, again, pretty competitive in the middle sector compared to what you would have expected from them in that part of the track. Ferrari doing decently well. Red Bull, decent as well, not great. Mercedes, I don't think you would expect them to be massively different from what their pace is there. Given that McLaren, though, are the same, obviously the same power unit in the back of the McLaren, obviously compared to the Mercedes uh, works team, there's definitely an argument to say that Mercedes should be about on the pace of McLaren through this part of the track, but a tenth and a half off they are. Haas, pretty strong in the middle sector, not surprised given they've got the Ferrari power unit. Alpine, looking pretty decent. Aston Martin, okay. And then you got Racing Bulls, Sauber, and then for some reason, Williams, the slowest team in the middle sector. I really don't get why they were so slow. Not just in the middle sector, but yesterday in general, because Colapinto, he got through to SQ3 on Friday, and he even thought he could have done a better job than what he did, which was P10. And then, had a pretty good sprint race. His pace was pretty decent. And then for some reason in qualifying, they just didn't show up and ended up 16th and 17th. But their race pace does look decent, so they might be a factor today if they can have a good start to the race. But yeah, surprising nonetheless from Williams. And for the final sector, very close between the top three teams. McLaren the best, though, through that part of the track. Alpine, again, fourth best team, just showing why, once again, those upgrades have improved the car. Haas, pretty good. Aston Martin, better than what they were showing through this part of the track on Friday. But then Mercedes, almost a quarter of a second off McLaren in the final sector. Again, nowhere near good enough, but I think might point to, once again, the temperature difference compared to Friday and the loss of pace they've had through the corners because of that. And then you got Lawson, and then Colapinto and Williams still, lack of pace, really surprising through this part of the track where they were looking actually pretty good on Friday in this part of the track. I think they were, the fifth or sixth best team in this part of the track on Friday. So, again, a surprising drop-off, and then Sauber, no surprise, at the very back. But if we go back to the top 10 from qualifying, let's just go through what at least I think the pecking order was from qualifying and what I think the pecking order will be in the race. Obviously, we'll get into that in a moment by looking at the data from the sprint race and with the the race pace we had in the sprint. By the way, just want to say for the amount we got watching, let's try and get the likes up if we can. Make sure to smash a like button if you haven't already. We're on 15 likes. Let's try and get up to 30 likes if we can in the next hour. That'd be great if we could do that, as we're about an hour and a half away from the start of the race. But I still think Red Bull have the best car this weekend, and I think definitely if that yellow flag did not come out at the end of Q3, I think Verstappen gets pole by probably a couple tenths of a second. So Red Bull are the team to beat for today, no doubt about it, even though they're second on the grid. And then in qualifying, I'd say McLaren were quicker than Ferrari, but for the race, I think Ferrari are probably slightly quicker than McLaren. Obviously, the top speed Ferrari have down that back straight really does help, especially if Ferrari are within a second of McLaren, because obviously with the DRS usage and the extra speed Ferrari have over McLaren, that really does help. But if you look at the sprint race, Ferrari, they, as the sprint went on, got quicker and quicker, and eventually were quicker than McLaren. But in qualifying trim, I'd say McLaren probably were quicker than Ferrari, and then fourth best team, Mercedes, but again, a very disappointing drop-off in performance we saw from them in qualifying. And then the fifth best team was probably Alpine. even though Gasly, I think, was truly special yesterday, I think Alpine, you'd have to say, did probably have the best midfield car for qualifying. Don't think that'll be the case today. I think it'll probably swing back in Haas's favour in the midfield fight there. But yeah, Alpine very impressive. And then after that, I think Haas were quicker and are quicker than Aston Martin, but they just didn't get a chance to show it at the very end of Q3. And then I'd probably say Racing Bulls are quicker than Aston Martin. I think I said it on commentary last night. Alonso really did a great job to get himself into the top 10 because I don't think the Aston Martin car was really top 10 material, but he really pulled out a special lap at the end to get himself in there. And again, doesn't really deserve to be up in, where he'll be 7th on the grid, but that's Fernando Alonso for you. So yeah, I'd say Racing Bulls probably a tad quicker than Aston Martin. And then I'd probably say Aston Martin and Williams probably on similar pace. Maybe Aston Martin slightly ahead, you could say. But again, I think they'll be on very similar pace. And then Sauber, of course, should be the slowest team. And they clearly were yesterday. But before we go on to the race pace from the sprint, let's just look at the top speeds from qualifying yesterday, just to see who we should be looking out for down that back straight. Now, Yuki Tsunoda ending up at the top, that was because Liam Lawson was providing Tsunoda deliberately with a slipstream in qualifying, so we can discount that. Red Bull, very quick with Perez down the back straight. This speed trap, by the way, located at the end of the back straight. Perez high up, but if you go and look at Max Verstappen's speed trap, he was down in, I think, like 15th place. So, what do you call it? Maybe Red Bull have gone for a very different setup for Perez, or I'm not sure. Maybe Perez got a very nice slipstream at some point. But it is weird to have, one car 3 or 4 kilometers an hour faster in a straight line than the other. So, again, maybe a setup difference there. Who knows? But it also could be that, Sergio Perez, what do you call it? Might have got a slipstream at some point. Kevin Magnussen and the Haas. Good top speed for him. And obviously the Ferrari Works team. No surprise about that for them. Obviously Ferrari have the strongest power unit in terms of raw power. Alpine, pretty good top speed, which is a surprise. Maybe they've took a slight bit of wing off to be a bit more competitive on that back straight. That could be why. But still, good top speed nonetheless. Mercedes, good top speed, but lacking in pace, so it doesn't really matter for them. But you would expect them, obviously, to come through the field from 17th and 20th. McLaren, not a great top speed, but that's to be expected with them. They don't have that quick of a car in a straight line, to be honest. And then Sauber, still don't get why their car is that much slower than the other two Ferrari-powered teams. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe that's, a big issue with that Sauber car is drag. Maybe that's a big reason why they are so consistently shit. Who knows? Williams do tend to be these days a lot slower in the speed trap than they used to be, but still quite slow compared to, say, Haas. Nearly 4 kilometers an hour slower than Haas, which I know it doesn't sound a lot, but that is quite a big difference between two different teams fighting around, the similar part of the field. So, yeah, a bit surprising there. Then Aston Martin, another kilometer an hour slower, and doing pretty well to have Alonso again in the top 10, considering they are the slowest in the speed traps. But Definitely watch out for the Ferrari powered teams, especially Ferrari in third and fourth on the grid. It should be fun to see what they can do with the DRS open on maybe Verstappen or Norris or whoever. Obviously, Haas, watch out for them, and we'll see who else can be strong down that back straight today in Austin. But let's get on to the race pace from the sprint. And this is one of the reasons I hate the sprint, because it spoils, the excitement of finding out in the race itself who, has good pace and who doesn't. And again, it's kind of a, it's like a, it's like say a tennis match. If, let's say you were really looking forward to a Grand Slam final between, I don't know, Sinner and Alcaraz, someone, say a final like that. A sprint race in F1 is kind of like if those two tennis players played the first set and then played the rest of the match, or, played the match again tomorrow. It would spoil that excitement of finding out in the moment, what's going to happen. So, yeah, we'll go through it, of course, because it is very important data to understand, what is probably going to happen today. But again, it's really one of the worst parts of the sprint race, because it really spoils the fun of finding out who is quick and who isn't. But here you go. Here is the average lap times from everyone, from all the teams in the sprint race. And Red Bull, no doubt the team to beat today. They were a tenth of a second per lap quicker than Ferrari, and a couple tenths of a second per lap quicker than Lando Norris. So, yeah, Red Bull and Max are the clear favourites today, even if they don't get the lead into turn one. If Max is second at the end of the first lap, I am pretty confident he is going to win this race. Mercedes, you can see, especially when they were suffering with their tyres, really big drop-off in pace. 0.8 of a second per lap they were losing to Red Bull. They are closer to midfield runners with their race pace than they are front runners. You can see Haas, though, they were fifth best, but look how quick they were compared to the rest of the midfield. 0.8 of a second quicker than the next midfield teams, being Williams, Racing Bulls, and Aston Martin, who were very close on pace with one another. That is an incredible pace from Haas, and if they can replicate that today, then they should be having both cars in the points. No doubt about it. So look out for Haas. They definitely should be making progress. And then, yeah, Williams, Racing Bulls, Aston Martin, and Alpine, all on very similar pace. Williams should improve from their grid position. We'll see how much by. And then Sauber, the slowest team, 2.5 seconds a lap off the pace. Quite incredible how slow Sauber are, even just compared to the midfield. 1.3 seconds per lap. They were slower, even compared to Haas. Never mind the front runners. Sauber in a different dimension. But that is pretty much the pecking order for the race. Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes, Haas, and then the midfield very close, and then Sauber at the very back. And with that, let's get on to my race prediction. And one thing I will have to do before I read these out is make an alteration, because when I did these predictions, it was before it was announced that George Russell would be starting from the pit lane. So I will have to just adjust my prediction for that part of the field. But let's get into it. So I think Max Verstappen will win the race comfortably today. Whether he gets the lead at turn one or some point during the race, I don't know. But he will win the race today, no doubt about it. He's been the best performing driver this weekend, and the car is the best on the grid this weekend. And when that is the case, Max is normally the winner. Second and third, though, I think will be Ferrari. I think they've definitely got better pace than McLaren. And they've looked strong all weekend, and I think they will finish second and third. And if they were to get that result, that would be a good result for them in the Constructors' Championship, which, by the way, is not over for Ferrari. They're 69 points behind McLaren. So if they were to get second and third, that would be a decent gain of points for them and would keep them in the fight in the Constructors. Norris, I think, will finish in fourth. Piastri, fifth. Russell, I did think would finish in sixth. Because of his penalty, though, I'm probably going to adjust that to Perez finishing in sixth with... I'm probably going to go... I'll go Kevin Magnussen to finish in seventh, and then Russell eighth, Hulkenberg ninth, and Lewis Hamilton in 10th. That's my top 10 race prediction. Let me know, guys, in the live chat. Do you agree or disagree with my prediction? Who do you think will win the US Grand Prix today? There's a poll running in the chat where you guys can let me know, or you can just let me know in the chat by typing your race winner. But I will come to you guys in a moment to see what you guys are having to say. Let me just quickly get the timer back on screen for you guys. And I'll just wait for the next minute to tick over before I do it. Let me just hold on. So we've got, how long have we got? I think an hour and 18 minutes, is it? I don't know why this picture is on the screen. The American flag. Yeah, don't know why that's in there. Let me just get rid of that. And, yeah, should be good now. Should have those American flags gone. But yeah, we've got an hour and 18 minutes to go until the race begins at Austin. Before I come to you guys in the chat, though, and Nib, good to see you in the chat. Says, hold that little bro. If you don't know, my team, Chelsea, have just lost to Nib's team, Liverpool. One thing I will say, though, is even though we lost, we gave a great account for ourselves, and that was a encouraging performance, because last season we went to Anfield, we got absolutely wiped off the face of the earth. So even though we lost, that gives me encouragement for the rest of the season, because if we can go to Anfield and have a competitive game with the team that you don't know might be winning the league, it shows that we're a good team. We just need maybe some better luck here and there, and just to get better in certain areas. So yeah, even though we lost, which I expected, I'm encouraged by that. But yeah, I'll come to your comments, guys, in a moment. I can see we're already on 36 likes. Let's try and get up to 50 likes if we can. So yeah, if you haven't hit the like button yet, make sure to do so, of course. Hitting the like button does help the channel grow in the algorithm, but it also helps me show that you guys enjoy the content. So if you do enjoy these watch-alongs and that, hit the like button. But yeah, let me just quickly discover what the quickest race strategy is for today. And Pirelli haven't tweeted anything so far, so who knows what the quickest race strategy is for today. My guess is that it will be a two-stop race. You need to be really quick to be able to do a two-stop here in, oh, it's not a two-stop, a one-stop here in the Circuit of the Americas, because, you know, say the medium or hard tire, yeah, it's durable, but not very quick, the compound, and also fresh tires is very much a advantage at this track. So it should be a two-stop race if there, of course, is no safety cars. And another reason there won't be, I don't think, any one-stop strategies today is because the lap time delta between all three tyres this weekend is really big. We have the C4, C3 and C2 compounds this weekend, but there is a 1 second difference at least between each compound. You know, when you go from C4 to C3, there's a second a lap difference. And then from C3 to C2, it's even more than a second. It's more like 1.2 seconds. So we might see a couple drivers starting on the soft compound tire just to try and get maybe some positions on the first lap, and try and maybe Mercedes will do that, try and get a bit further up the field, and then maybe they'll go for an early pit stop to say an early start to the two-stop strategy. I could see that happening, but it should be either medium, medium hard, or medium hard, medium. I'd be surprised if we saw 2 sets of hard tires used in this race again, because even though the hard compound tire is very durable, it's not quick enough to be used, say for 2/3 of the race. So, yeah, that's what I think will happen. Two-stop race. Obviously, when I go through the teams later, I'll make sure to touch on strategy for certain teams and what I think certain teams can do to, improve their results through strategy. Of course, Mercedes is one team that, could do quite a bit strategically to get themselves up the field. But yeah, we'll get into that later on, probably in about 30 or 40 minutes or so. Oh, right. So, Rooks has found it on the F1 site, what Pirelli have said. Quote, the strong likelihood is that this will be another two-stop race, with the fastest way to the flag being the medium-hard-medium strategy. As I said, that was going to be one of the best ways. The optimum approach would be to have a first pit stop between lap 14 and 22, and then a second pit stop between lap 34 and 41. Yeah, no surprises there. I think with Max Verstappen, I think if he can get into the lead and pull away a bit from Lando Norris in the first stint, I think he will try to go as long as he can, Verstappen, because he won't want to get pulled into, the pits too early. And if he can pull away enough from Lando in that first stint, then all he has to do at that point is just react to the cars behind, which is ideal for Red Bull. Right, let's scroll up and read some of your comments. Good to see you all here, by the way. Hope you're all doing well on this Sunday night for me in the UK. The Woden says, I think Leclerc is the better, but Sainz is a top-tier driver. I don't agree. I don't think Sainz is a top-tier driver. He's kind of in between top tier and the next tier. Some of the time he's miles off of it, and then some of the time he's really good. And I don't think that is enough to be a top tier driver. And I don't think I can put, say, Carlos Sainz on the same level as Leclerc, Norris, Verstappen, Russell. I just can't put him on the same level as them because he's not consistently good enough, in my view. But on his day, very, very good. But that's the issue, is on his day, he's very good. And that's kind of with Oscar Piastri, someone who I like a lot and have obviously been a big fan of in these last few races, with him performing so well and performing so many daring overtakes. probably the one thing Piastri needs to work on a bit is making sure he's consistently great every weekend. Because there is still a bit too often with Oscar weekends where he's just not on the pace. Where it's like a track where he's not quite as good around. He tends to be, quite a bit off the pace compared to what he's like at other tracks. And if you're going to be a truly elite driver, you can't be really having that affect you in a big way. So I think that's something for Oscar to work on, because this weekend and in Singapore, Oscar's not really been, he's not really been on it. I know obviously he was on the podium in Singapore, but I think that was really down to the car being so incredibly quick on fresh tires in Singapore. Woden says Russell's still on an upward curve and will only get better. I still think Russell's had a great year. I know certain people are not big fans of him. Obviously, I've criticised him plenty in the past, but I think he's had a great year. Considering Mercedes, the way they started the year and still haven't been that great in these last few races, I think Russell's done a good job. I think he has. Woden saying, yeah, McLaren have had to change the front and rear wing. Whether that's because they've dropped off pace-wise, again, we don't know. Because there's been other times where McLaren or Red Bull or whoever have had to take a certain part off their car, and those teams have been just as quick as they were previously. So we'll find out more in Mexico, I think, as to whether this is this could be just a problem with this track this weekend. Maybe it's a bit too bumpy for them or something. Louis Frutos, I think it is, says Yuki for president. Big fan. Do to consider a face cam, bro. I tried a face cam years ago, and I'm just not comfortable with it. I did a couple videos with a face cam, and like I said, I'm just not comfortable doing, having my face on stream, which maybe, yeah, hurts. You can hurt the channel or videos in some way, but it's down to whether you're comfortable or not, doing that. And I'm not. But there's plenty of other channels out there, way more successful than mine, that don't show their face. So yeah, like I said, I've considered it, but it's just not for me. And plus, I don't want to have to take the time to get my hair all set and all of that to be on stream, because yeah, I've got quite a bit of hair, and yeah, I just don't want to have to be doing that stuff as well. And I do look, by the way, if you do find that old video, I think from a few years ago where I did a face reveal, I do look quite a bit different now than I did then. Quite a bit different. So yeah, I look almost unrecognizable compared to then. Let me as the Woden laughing at Will F1 for saying that Piastri has been the 9th best driver this season, which yeah, I don't agree with that at all. I'm not sure where I would put Piastri exactly in terms of ranking him for the season. At the mid-season break, I think I had him in, was it 6th place or 7th place? I might put him a position higher, probably into the top 5, but yeah, let's wait until the end of the season before we do that. I will do that, by the way, at the end of the year. end of season rankings. As we're 3 likes away from 50. So make sure to smash the like button. Let's get up to 50 likes. The Woden says at least they can change setups after the sprint now, keeps it a bit more interesting. That is better, and I will say that the format they've come up with for having the sprint weekend, it's the best format they can have, but it's like polishing a turd, in my view. It just makes it slightly more tolerable, I guess you could call it. The new Red Devil says, sadly, I hate to admit, but Lando's not winning. Yeah, he's gonna have to pull off quite an incredible drive today if he's gonna win. And if he is to win today, in a genuine battle with Verstappen, it'd probably be by far his best performance of his career, and obviously best win of his career. Lando has a 3 race what the hell am I on about? 3 race wins to his name, looking for number 4 today. But yeah, I think Max is the clear favourite to win today. Hello to Francisco, by the way. Good to see you. And Francisco says, I can see Ferrari winning today. 2 contending cars will help them. When I get onto Ferrari later, I will explain why I don't think they'll win. But I will also explain how they could win, depending on certain circumstances. And I'll explain what circumstances. As Nib just said that Joe Rogan is in the McLaren garage, which not really a surprise given his idol was with the McLaren team in Miami. Let me just scroll down a bit. It's just jumped. There you go. Hello to G Walker, by the way, who's another regular. Hope you're doing well. He says, my home race in Austin. I live 1 hour west. Max will nail it today. So impressed with Carlos yesterday. Yeah, Carlos was very good, but again, let's not go too overboard with how we rank him amongst the grid. He's not. I don't think he's a top tier driver. He's a very good driver. He, if you have like a clear number 1 driver in your team, he's very good to have as a number 2, like what Ferrari have. But he's not exactly a guy you would employ to win you a world championship. But for Williams, absolutely fantastic to have him on board, and Alex Albon as well. And Nib saying Sainz top tier driver shouts in 2024. I think you could have made an argument for him being a top tier driver probably back in maybe 2020 to a degree, but back then we all thought he was a lot better than he is now, because back then he was beating Lando Norris, not every week, but most weeks. And was finishing up in the top, what was it, like 5, top 6 in the championship. But since he's gone to Ferrari, Leclerc, his teammate, has clearly been better than him, and has shown, I think, how good Sainz really is. Willifon says Norris will never win a championship. Maybe we'll have to see. You don't know what the future holds. If if McLaren build a car that is miles quicker than everyone else, then I could see Lando winning a championship. Say regardless of Sainz is top of tier two. Yeah, I think you could say that. I think him and probably given the current form, probably Hulkenberg as well. You'd throw up there as top of the second tier. Um, and then yeah, probably who else? Maybe you could say Albon as well. But yeah, like I said, he's not a top driver. As Buzz C saying Hamilton sucks and that Oscar is a future champion. As Saint in the chat saying Lewis for the win today. I'm not sure he's seen where Lewis is on the grid. Rooks says, I'm imagining huge 80s rock hair. You're not far off. You're not far off. It's not as big as that type of hair, but it's not far off. Josephine says, great, can't wait to hear the Dutch national anthem. It's been a while. It's been what is it? The Spanish Grand Prix was the last time Max Verstappen won a race. I know he won the sprint, but it's the sprint. But yeah, Spanish Grand Prix 4 months ago was the last time Max Verstappen won a race. The longest he's gone without winning a race, I think, since 2020. During a season, in terms of a win drought. But still, in the lead of the championship by 54 points. So it just shows you that with Max, he doesn't necessarily even need the best car to be a world champion, because since probably the race all the way back at Imola back in May, which was 5 months ago, since then, I think you'd have to say McLaren most of the time have had the best car, even though Lando Norris repeatedly keeps telling everyone McLaren have not had the best car, which of course he's going to say that because it benefits him and it makes him look better if he says that, and also makes his mistakes not look as bad. But yeah, McLaren since May have had the better car, yet Max has scored, I think, is it 1 point more than Lando or 2 points more than Lando since Miami? That's the difference between Max Verstappen and Lando Norris. Max, no matter the car, consistently week in, week out, gets the best result he can. Lando Norris does not. And if that trait or attribute that Lando has of, not quite meeting the potential he has, if that continues for the rest of his career, it's going to be pretty hard to win a championship unless McLaren do give him a rocket ship. Hold on, just scrolled a bit too far. Josephine says McLaren is definitely winning the Constructors' Championship. I think they will, but I still think it will be close. Because Red Bull, they've clearly improved, and if they keep this up, and Ferrari keep their level of performance up, which is still pretty good and race win contending worthy maybe still, then Red Bull still could pull it back. You know, that 39-point lead McLaren have. They could still pull it back and take the constructors' title. But I do think McLaren will take it. By the way, good to see so many people here. As we've got 62 likes. Let's try, if we can, and get up to, say, 70 likes in the next 10 minutes or so. That'd be great if we could. So if you haven't hit the like button yet, make sure to do so. Obviously, it does help show me that you guys enjoy the content. And obviously does help us in the algorithm. Vinster, good to see you, mate. Says, hey, everyone. It's going to be an interesting race for sure. Max, Lando, Oscar, Checo, and Charles. Yep, it's going to be a good race, no doubt about it. How good? We'll have to find out, but definitely will be a good one. Yanni says, I think Hamilton will show. If that's finished last, I'm not sure I can agree with that, but he says eventually Hamilton will pass Zhou. That's what I meant to type. Vinster says, to be honest, these midday races mess me up. Well, yeah, usually in the US, these races, or F1 races, usually start at, was it 8 p.m. or so, which it is here in the UK. Oh, no, not 8 p.m. What am I about? I've done it the wrong way. Normally early in the morning, like 8 a.m., not 8 p.m. But, yeah, obviously, good timings for this race and obviously the next couple, and obviously Las Vegas in a month from now. So good for the American or North American audience. Be Nice UK says Lewis wanted to change the car and start from the pit lane. Bono said no. If that's true, then I don't know what Bono's on and what he's smoking, but I'd love some of it because it's obvious to starting from the pit lane and put a new setup on. When you're a top team, if you surprisingly go out in Q1, unless it's a street track, you start from the pit lane, you put a new setup on to, either aid overtaking, or let's say there was a setup issue they had in qualifying, you fix that. I don't see why not doing that is going to benefit Lewis. But that's what they've decided to do. We'll see what happens. So regardless, I think Verstappen will win today, to be honest. Bradley Bartman says Hamilton for the win. He must win. Hopefully he does. If not him, Carlos. Again, I think you might be maybe forgetting or you don't know where Hamilton is on the grid. The Woden says, but surely as a 7-time world champion, you would override that decision. Well, it's more in the hands of the engineers, isn't it, to do that. But you would think, as a team, they would take the advice of Lewis Hamilton to put a new setup on and start from the pit lane. If he says the setup's wrong, put a new setup on it. Simple as. There's nothing to lose. Mercedes are not fighting for the championship. They're not fighting for any higher position in the constructors. They're going to finish in 4th. Just starting from the pit lane. End of. I just don't get it. That's Santiago Lopez says Colapinto, love heart. And yeah, Colapinto, what a inclusion and addition to the grid he has been. And I really hope Sauber do select him to be their driver for 2024 because he's been brilliant. He's been one of the, I'd say, most impressive drivers we've seen from that midfield pack the whole season. And he's only been in the car, since Monza, which was like 4 races ago, or 3 races ago, something like that. He's been very, very impressive. So, yeah, fingers crossed, Colapinto will be a full-time driver next year. But his South American counterpart, Gabriel Bortoleto, is very much in contention for that seat as well. So we'll find out probably in the next, I would imagine the next probably 4 to 5 weeks we'll get an announcement from Sauber as to who their lineup will be next year. Obviously, we know Hulkenberg's going to be in the car. Vince says, can Red Bull ditch previous upgrades and revert the car to winning settings without penalty? That's pretty much, I think, not entirely what they've done in these last, say, few weeks, but I think they have discovered whatever has made the car worse, which they admitted it was certain upgrades that just didn't quite work for their car, and they've done some work to discover the issues, and they found them and altered the setup, played around with some parts, and here we are. They're back to being their best. But it does work for some teams where you take newer parts off the car that aren't working, and suddenly you're quicker. Aston Martin, a couple years ago, I remember at the very end of the season, took a load of upgrades off the car, and then suddenly finished on the podium in Brazil. Haas did it as well back in, I think, 2019 with Grosjean. Don't know if anyone remembers that, but Haas that year, for some reason, their car's upgrades just weren't working, and Grosjean requested to go back to the Australia spec version, which was the version they had at the first Grand Prix. He did that, and then Haas suddenly were way quicker again. So it does happen where you remove upgrades and you go back to being quicker. Not all upgrades work. Some upgrades make your car literally slower. I remember as well, Ferrari have had it. I think in 2018, I remember, they brought a rear wing towards the end of the season that they thought was going to work, and it actually ended up adding way too much drag to the car, slowed them down, and then funnily enough, at this Grand Prix 6 years ago, they removed it, and then returned to being quick, and then they won the US Grand Prix that year with Kimi Räikkönen. So, again, removing upgrades that haven't worked it is something that can work. Nib says, Max did say they scrapped all their planned upgrades, which they had planned from Monza onwards, and they have figured out what was wrong. Yeah. And I'm sure now they know where they were going wrong, development-wise, they will have probably a different plan with next year's car, which, of course, the design of that will be very much going on at the minute, and they'll obviously be in the process of very soon getting to properly build that car and create next year's Red Bull. Will F1 says that 2022 Aston Martin was shit. Oh, was it? I don't know. It wasn't that one. It was last year's Aston Martin. It wasn't the 2022 one. It was last year's. Where, again, for the Brazilian Grand Prix, they took the upgrades off and then got a podium in Brazil. I was thinking for some reason it was 2 years ago. It's because it's been that long since Aston Martin have been competitive. It feels like a couple years ago to me. As we're 45 minutes away from the race getting underway. And looking at the track, it is a balmy day in Austin. Very hot and sunny. But yeah, I'm probably going to read out a few more of your comments for the next 10 minutes or so. Then I'll post a link of the stream back out. And also get into the teams in a bit more detail and how I think their race will pan out. So we'll be doing that pretty soon. Yeah, still keep your comments coming as we'll get to reading some more in a moment. As we're now 73 likes. Cheers for that, guys. Let's try, if we can, might be a bit ambitious, but let's try and get to 100 likes if we can by the start of the race. So another 45 minutes. Let's try and get to 100 likes. And yeah, smash that like button if you haven't already. But G Walker says Colapinto has a solid future in F1. Absolutely. Let me see if I can find some other comments here quick. Yanni says, does the Red Bull have the ridiculous bazooka tunnels or are they gone? I don't know if you're talking about the wind tunnel, but I do know that they are building a new wind tunnel because the one they have had previously was around since the war. And to be fair with Red Bull, they have had a long time to update that wind tunnel, and probably should have done it in the years where they weren't winning championships. Because if they had, then they'd probably be in an even better position now than they are when it comes to, you know, developing their car in the wind tunnel. Yannis says, no, I mean the tube-like things on the engine cover. I don't think so. As on Sky F1, they're showing replays of some of the recent starts we've had here. Of course, contact at turn 1 very much is something we have seen before. Hopefully that doesn't happen today. Obviously, a couple years ago, we remember Carlos Sainz started on pole and then got took out by George Russell on the first corner. And it is a difficult corner not to make contact. You know, uphill, hairpin pretty much. And with how wide these cars are, contact sometimes is inevitable. Andrew Wright says no DRS in 2026. Yeah, I don't know if that's been confirmed, but I know that's what they are wanting to do for 2026 because they think the cars with the active aero they're going to have in 2026 won't need DRS. We'll see about that. But one thing I can announce that, well, has already been announced is that next year the point for the fastest lap will be no more. Starting from 2025, there will no longer be a point for a fastest lap, which I always did not like the whole fastest lap point. I got, you know, the argument that, oh, well, you know, it keeps teams on their toes. It keeps teams trying to, you know, to be quick in a race and not, just trundle home. But it ends up, as we saw in Singapore, it ends up just becoming a point of contention and more of a strategy thing of, well, we haven't done well today. Let's make sure to get the fastest lap point, or let's make sure another team gets the fastest lap point to help us against our rivals. And it is just unnecessary. So, yeah, it's good that they've got rid of that. Let's hope the sprint race format isn't too far behind in fucking off the calendar. Nib saying we finally won, Chaz. Yeah, it was almost 6 years ago when that was brought in. Back in I think it was 2019 was the first year of it. And yeah, it's just, I've never liked it. The Woden saying they may as well give a point for pole. That, for me, makes more sense than a point for fastest lap, because whoever gets the fastest lap in a race, it's not based on who actually was the fastest, because you could just pit on the final lap and take the fastest lap. So, if you go back in F1 history and look at races where there wasn't a fastest lap point, pre-2019, there's plenty of drivers who took the fastest lap, yet they didn't win the race. I remember, was it Kimi Räikkönen in 2008? He got like 10 fastest laps that year in the 18 races, yet he only won like 2 races that year, I think, or 3. So it's pointless, no pun intended. Gemma London says, I think these sprint races should be dropped. Absolutely. But that's going to be a lot harder to get rid of, unfortunately. And Francisco saying exactly what I think. Points should only be for the race. Exactly. Right, let's see if I can find a few more comments here. And then I'll go on to the teams for a bit and just get into how I think their races will play out. As we've got, 37 minutes to go until the race begins. As all the cars are now making their way around to the grid. Obviously, the pit lane shuts in just over 5 minutes. The Woda says, was that the year Kimi nearly bankrupted Lotus for all the good results he kept getting? No, it was the year where Kimi got loads of fastest laps was 2008. Where, I think he had a streak of he may have got 8 fastest laps in a row, plus another 2 or 3 fastest laps somewhere else. Yeah, for some reason, he kept getting the fastest lap, but he only won, I think, 2 races, maybe 3 that year. It was, quite incredible to have that many fastest laps and not win that many races. But that's what happened. Jagma Demirel, I think it is. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Says, Hamilton was really disappointing this year. Hope he gets his 8th championship with Ferrari. I hope he does return to form next year when he goes to Ferrari, especially if Ferrari are in the position they're in now, where they're able to fight for race wins, because that's what we need. If we have, let's say next season, at the start of next season, we've got Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, and McLaren all on similar pace. We need, your Leclercs, Hamiltons up there fighting for wins on a regular basis. They're elite drivers and they deserve to be fighting for that. And, that's what That's what we want to see at the end of the day. But there is a question of, is Lewis Hamilton past his prime? He might be. I think honestly he is past his absolute best. But whether he's clearly past his best, like say Michael Schumacher was when he came back to Formula One after a few years out, we still need to wait, I think until next year. If next year he goes to Ferrari and he gets beaten comfortably by Leclerc, then I think at that point you would have to say, yeah, Hamilton is past his best. But I still believe, because I mean, we have to remember this season he has won a couple races, and in this ground effect era, I guess you could call it, he had still put in many great performances. He just hasn't had the car with him enough to have a load of race wins to his name or pole positions. So we do also need to factor that in. Because, I mean, if you look at 2023, last year, I thought he was one of the probably top 3 best drivers on the grid. But he was in a car that couldn't win a race. So, yeah, we will wait until next year. As we're on 92 likes now. Let's, yeah, we're 8 likes away from 100. So, yeah, let's try and get to 100, guys, in these next few minutes. Be absolutely brilliant if we could do that. Good to see so many of you tuning in for what promises to be a good race in Austin on a cracking day in Texas. G Walker says, what makes anyone think that Hamilton can show again with Ferrari because he can't do shit in his current ride with the top team? Well, as there you go. We have got over 100 likes. That was very quick. We're up to 104 just like that. Thank you guys very much. Very much appreciated. And let's keep getting them up as we can. Well, obviously Ferrari, they're run differently to Mercedes. They've got a faster car than Mercedes do at the moment, and they might do next season. And maybe Ferrari are better placed than Mercedes for the future, going into 2026. So that might just be what he needs. Maybe a fresh and maybe better environment for him might get him back to his best. Who knows? That's the beauty of waiting to find out until we get to next year, is we just don't know at the end of the day. So, we'll wait and see. But, you could make the argument Ferrari at the minute are a better run team than Mercedes. I think Fred Vasseur has done a fantastic job with Ferrari, as I knew he would. When he was appointed team principal, I knew he would be a good team boss. And I think he has proven to be a good team boss. Yeah, Ferrari have not contended for a championship yet since he took over, but they've been getting closer and closer the longer he's been there. And, going forward into the new era in 2026, we'll see. And obviously, Ferrari at the minute look better than Mercedes do. So that's also, something that could propel Hamilton into showing some better form. But, next year, if Ferrari are able to fight week in, week out for race wins, I could see Hamilton winning 2 or 3 races easily next year. But it all depends on how high his level is. And if it's the same as this year, then maybe he can only pick up a couple wins. But if he returns to his prime, he could end up winning the championship next season. So, again, that's the beauty of waiting to find out. We will see. But before we go any further, let me just post the link of the stream back out. And then we'll move on to talking about the teams and what they can do to maximize their race results. So just give me a second, guys, whilst I do this. As all the cars, well, not all the cars, but almost all the cars lined up on the grid now. Come join us here to watch along the US GP from Austin, Texas. And there you go. So, let's crack on and go, or let me just hide the timer quickly. And let's just whiz through the teams and go through, again, what they need to do if they're going to get the best race result today, what they can do maybe on strategy to do, or to get their best result. Let's go through that quickly now. So, starting, of course, with the world champions Red Bull. Max, second on the grid, has the pace to win today. He is the favourite to win today. Make sure, by the way, to vote in the poll at the top of the chat to let me know who you think is going to win this race. There's still another 25 minutes remaining until that poll will be closed. Verstappen, though, doesn't need to take the lead straight away at the first corner. As long as he is second at the end of the first lap and, he doesn't have any damage or anything like that, that is, I think, still good enough. Because he should still have the pace to catch and pass and win this US Grand Prix. So as long as Verstappen stays out of trouble at the start and maintains at worst his position, he should be fine to win the race. Sergio Perez, obviously a bit lower down on the grid than he should be. Really should be on, say, the third row of the grid. He's in ninth. I think with Perez, it's probably just worth going a bit longer into the race today and maybe seeing if that is able to bring him into the fight with maybe Piastri, who's lagging behind a bit in that front group. But if that doesn't really do anything for him, then I think really you can't expect Perez to finish any higher than sixth. So, yeah, maybe Perez could go a bit longer on strategy, but I don't think it's necessarily a guarantee for him to work. Ferrari, though, third and fourth on the grid. Sainz in third with Leclerc in fourth. They were very quick in the sprint yesterday. They weren't the quickest, but still very quick. They could win the race today, but the reason I don't think they will is because I think a bit too much needs to go their way for them to win. What they need is for Lando Norris to stay ahead of Max Verstappen for as long as possible. Because if that happens, because Ferrari have got probably the same, if not better, race pace than McLaren, that will keep Ferrari in that battle, right behind Verstappen and Norris, and able to fight with them. But if Verstappen gets past Norris at the start, or, within the first 5 laps and pulls away, there's nothing Ferrari, I think, at that point they can do to win the Grand Prix. So it's all about Lando Norris staying ahead of Max Verstappen. The longer that is the case, the chances of Ferrari winning increase. Because then when we get to the first pit stop, if Lando is still ahead, maybe then Ferrari could try and undercut, or maybe go a couple laps longer to try and have fresher tyres for the next stint of the race. But if that doesn't happen, Lando staying ahead of Max into the first pit stop, then, like I said, Ferrari, I don't think, can win today. Second and third, though, which is what I predicted for them, if they do finish there, that's still a really good result. They weren't, I think, expected to come here and win, really. So a double podium would be a fantastic result. But they can win this Grand Prix, no doubt. It can happen. They just need Lando Norris to do them a favour. For Mercedes-Benz, nothing to lose today. 17th and 20th on the grid for them. George Russell, of course, starting from the pit lane after his crash. And sadly for him, lost the upgrades in that crash on his car. So he'll be racing with a previous spec of certain parts. And as long as Mercedes get both cars in the top 10, then that should be good enough. I think Mercedes will definitely run longer into the race than other cars. Wouldn't be surprised if they wait until, say, lap 20 or so until they make their first pit stop and then go for a bit of a later second pit stop as well. But no chance of them finishing in the top 5 unless there's a safety car or a virtual safety car at the right time. And like I said, as long as they get both cars in the points, that is good enough. For McLaren, they are definitely underdogs today. Even though in the last few races they've had very good pace and they've been successful as of late, there's no doubt, looking at the data, they are on the back foot pace-wise. But they are on pole position. End of story. So they have the ability to control this race. But can they do that? Can Lando Norris keep Max Verstappen behind? I don't think he can. One, because I don't think Lando is good enough to keep Max behind, but also I don't think McLaren are fast enough. But this really is a race where if Lando can somehow win, this really could be a big turning point in the championship. Not just because Lando will gain points, but really because it will boost Lando's confidence so much if he does win today in a genuine 1v1 fight against Verstappen. Like I said, I don't think he will win that fight because I don't think the pace is there for McLaren and I don't think Lando's good enough to keep Max behind. But we will find out. Maybe he can. Maybe McLaren could do something strategically to put themselves at the top of the podium at the end of the 56 laps. For Oscar Piastri, in 5th, we've seen this weekend, he's not been quick, but he's in a McLaren car that, it's not that far off the pace and is, competitive enough with, say, Ferrari and Red Bull. Piastri, I think what he needs ideally is for the top 4 to be fighting quite a bit in the first stint and at least the first half of the race. And then Piastri can capitalise on that, maybe manage his tyres whilst they're burning their tyres out to try and, to gain position. But I think what he really does need is not only them battling for position, the front 4 ahead of him, but he needs it to the point where he can then go for an alternate strategy to try and get past. Say, pitting a lap or lap or 2 before, say, if the 2 Ferraris are racing hard to try and get past them, or maybe he goes longer if Lando and the 2 Ferraris are having their own battle. Maybe going longer and doing some some good in laps is the thing that's able to get Oscar into that podium fight. But if that doesn't happen, I don't see how Oscar, on pure pace alone, can fight for the podium. So I think Oscar will probably finish in 5th. But McLaren, again, performance-wise, they're on the back foot, but they undoubtedly can still win. They just need to be at the absolute very best. Now let's go on to the midfield quickly. Aston Martin, Alonso 7th on the grid, way higher on the grid than really they should be. They are not that quick, and I would be surprised if Alonso finishes in the points. I don't think the pace is there for Fernando to finish there. They're going to have to rely, Aston Martin, on Fernando to get them to finish in the points. And if they do finish in the top 10, then, great result for them. But realistically, if you look at the data, they're slower than Haas, slower than Alpine, probably slower than Racing Bulls, who are a bit further behind. So it's going to be a tough day for them. The Racing Bulls, they got Yuki Tsunoda in P10. I think Tsunoda, to score points, he's going to have to probably rely on a couple DNFs for him to get in and finish in the top 10. His pace is decent. It's just not good enough, I think, for the top 10. For Alpine, Pierre Gasly up in 6th on the grid, thankfully, because of Russell's starting from the pit lane. He starts from P6. What a performance from him in qualifying. If he keeps that up, though, in the race today, there's no reason why Gasly can't finish maybe 8th or 9th. It is possible. I just don't think Alpine are going to be as good today as they were in qualifying, which is why I've predicted Gasly not to finish in the points. But it's definitely possible. Again, as long as they can keep up what we saw yesterday, and especially Pierre Gasly. Williams, a bit too low down on the grid to score points today, unfortunately, but they should improve from where they are. Qualifying was not a true representation of how good they are. Sauber, sack of shit, and Haas do have, I still think, the best midfield pace. They just didn't get a good enough grid position yesterday to set themselves up nicely for the race today. If they had qualified well with both cars, they could be looking today at scoring more points than they probably would have expected to, given that Mercedes are low down on the grid. But with Magnussen 8th and Hülkenberg in, I think, 11th on the grid, it makes their chances of taking advantage of Mercedes' problems, less so. But I do think they'll have both cars in the points. Their pace in the sprint yesterday was really, really good. And if they can keep that up, they should have both cars in the points. And let me just remind you guys of my race prediction that I showed earlier. Max Verstappen, I think, will win the race today from Carlos Sainz at 2nd, Leclerc 3rd, Norris 4th, Piastri 5th. This prediction was made before Russell, it was announced that Russell was going to start from the pit lane. So my altered prediction is that it will be Perez in 6th, Magnussen 7th, Russell 8th, Hülkenberg 9th, and Lewis Hamilton in P10. And of course, if this result was to happen and Lando Norris does not get the fastest lap, and neither did, say, Verstappen, Max Verstappen would pull the lead of the championship up to 67 points. And you'd have to say, if the lead does go up to that after today's race, the championship at that point is over. Lando is not going to gain the points needed, if that increase of points for Verstappen does happen. But let me just come back to here, and I'll get the timer back on screen in a moment. I'll just wait for the next minute to tick over before I put it on screen, as Martin Brundle has just about concluded his grid walk. No issues with celebrities this time in America for Martin. I know he's had plenty of issues before in America of celebrities not wanting to talk, as everyone, or almost everyone, lined up for the national anthem, which will be playing in a moment, as we are only just over 15 minutes to go. And there you go. 16 minutes to go until the US Grand Prix gets underway. Good to see, by the way, that we've got 127 likes. Let's try and get up to 150 likes if we can by the time the race begins in 15 minutes. That'd be great if we could do that. And just to clarify, for certain people who might not understand, this is a race watch-along. Meaning that, no, unfortunately, I cannot show the actual race live. If I could, trust me, I would. I'd have it on the screen and I'd be commentating over it, and it would be great. But because of obvious copyright issues, if I was to do that, this stream would get took down in probably literally a heartbeat. That's why I'm not going to show the race live. What I'll be doing is showing pictures, a slideshow pictures, and a live running order and lap, lap graphic in terms of what lap it is. And I will be giving pretty much radio style commentary for the race. So if you're unable to watch the race, but you want to keep up to date with what's going on, this is the place to be, because I will keep you absolutely bang up to date with everything going on in the Grand Prix. As yeah, just under 15 minutes to go until the race begins. Make sure, by the way, to keep voting in that poll. So I'll be finishing up the results of that poll probably in about 7 or 8 minutes from now. Let me just read out a few final comments before we go any further. Zero Spydoc says, I'm glad Kota has good drainage system with all the crying Zach has been doing. Obviously, he's talking about Zach Brown, who's been, whining maybe a little too much to the FIA about what Red Bull are potentially doing with their front bib adjuster, which is on the underneath of their car, I believe. That whole controversy has been so overblown. And it's been proven that Red Bull, haven't done anything wrong. They haven't, it's not been proven that Red Bull have broken the rules actively, during a race when it comes to that. So, Red Bull haven't been punished, rightfully so. Of course, if there's evidence that, Red Bull actually did adjust that under Parc Ferme, then punishment should happen. But, the evidence needs to be there at the end of the day. Yagma Demirel says, even though I don't like Max Verstappen, we can say that he carried Red Bull single-handedly this year. Yeah, I think you could say that. I think, especially if Red Bull win the Constructors' Championship, I think you could say that Red Bull have to thank, first and foremost, Max Verstappen. Because without him, that would definitely not be possible at this point, given how the Red Bull car has been performance-wise through this season. Home of the Tosser says, best to do own commentary as the guy on the real F1 commentary gets on my nerves. Let's see if I can find a few more comments. Todd says, do you think Danny replaces Sergio after Mexico and that's why they didn't give him a big send-off? I would be surprised at that, because I think there would be some rumours in the media if that was going to happen. So no, I think Perez will be in the car for the rest of the year. And especially if Red Bull win the Constructors' Championship, I think Perez will probably stay in that car. But if they don't win it, be interesting to see what they do, because maybe Ricciardo will come back into the Racing Bulls team to replace, say, Tsunoda, if they decide to promote him to the role of second driver. Just over 10 more minutes. Saint says, when Hamilton is winning, you say it's the car, and when it's not him, you people can't make your minds up. Give the man credit. I don't think you actually know my actual view on Lewis Hamilton, because I don't think you'd be saying that if you knew that. I think you're arguing with a straw man in your head, or you're arguing against arguments you've seen online, when I have not really made such arguments. Herman says, turn the volume up on your end, Chazza. It should be fine. Certain times I do put my face to the side of the mic, so it might be that sometimes that might be making you think it's a bit quieter. But trust me, once we get into the race, it'll be all good because I'll be probably screaming my head off for an hour and a half, which is exactly how you want Sunday afternoons to be. Rinhart, I think it is, says, I think Max will win the World Drivers' Championship, but they won't get the Constructors. Yeah, I agree. I think they'll be close-ish to the Constructors, but I think McLaren will take it because I think McLaren will be strong enough in these final 6 races. And plus, Sergio Perez will continue to, have his poor performances and probably have a couple non-points finishes, knowing him. Right, I'll just read out a couple final comments and then we will get into things. Wendy Hunter says Lando's got this. Doggy Dog says Max and Lando collide turn 1. It is possible. We've seen collisions here, like I said, a couple years ago, Russell and Sainz. Obviously, Rosberg and Hamilton had contact here at turn 1. Contact happens most times at the first corner. But let me see if I can find one more comment. Willif1 saying Hamilton is finished, in his opinion, as a top driver. By the way, Rinhart says, thanks for doing this live. Really awesome. No problem. And we are, 136 likes now. Like I said, let's try and get up to 150 if we can in the next few minutes. That'd be great if we could do that. But thank you guys for commenting. Obviously, I'll try to come to maybe some comments here and there when I can. Obviously, during the race, it's going to be hard, especially if it's a very exciting one. But yeah, thank you guys for being here. And hopefully, you will enjoy watching along with us this US Grand Prix. And again, if you're unable to watch, but you want to keep up with what's going on, this is a great place to be because you'll be up to date on everything going on in the Grand Prix. But before we go any further, let me finish up the poll in the chat where we have had over 1,000 votes in this poll. And eventually it will pop up in the chat in a moment. And I'll read it out, the results, once it comes up. And there you go, 1.3k votes. Thank you so much, guys, for voting on who do you think will win the United States Grand Prix. And 54% of you have gone for Max Verstappen, 29% have gone for Lando Norris, 9% for Charles Leclerc, and 6% for Carlos Sainz. And I agree. I do think Max Verstappen will take the win. But maybe we'll be proved wrong. Maybe Lando Norris will win a race that maybe he wasn't the favourite to win for the first time in a while. But let me hide that countdown and get on to a final couple things before lights out. Firstly, championship standings. After the sprint race, Max Verstappen is 54 points clear of Lando Norris. Lando, for the championship, must beat Max today. Even if Max finishes second, Lando has got to beat him if he wants to win the World Championship. Charles Leclerc third. Oscar Piastri not that far behind in P4. Carlos Sainz in fifth, with Lewis Hamilton in sixth, Russell seventh, Perez eighth, Alonso ninth, and Hülkenberg 10th. And then in the Constructors, McLaren 39 points clear of Red Bull, who are only 30 points clear of Ferrari. Mercedes in fourth, Aston Martin fifth. After the sprint yesterday, Haas scored enough points to go up to 6th. They'll be hoping to pull away now from Racing Bulls in that fight for 6th in the championship. Racing Bulls 7th, Williams 8th, Alpine in 9th, and Sauber still pointless in 10th. Let's go through some stats there regarding the top teams coming into this Grand Prix. Max Verstappen, great record here at the Circuit of the Americas. He has won the last 3 races here, and Red Bull have won 3 times here since 2015. Max's last race win, though, was 9 races ago in Spain. In the, I think, final week of June it was. Quite a long time ago. For Ferrari, their last win at the Circuit of the Americas was in 2018, 6 years ago. Kimi Raikkonen, a famous win that day. Raikkonen's final win it was in Formula 1. And that is their only race win here in Austin. Their last race win in Formula 1, 3 races ago at Monza, of course. Mercedes, their last race win at the Circuit of the Americas was in 2019 with Valtteri Bottas. Mercedes have been pretty successful here in the past. 4 times they won here since 2015. Mercedes' last race win, though, 5 races ago at Spa. Of course, they're not going to win today unless an absolute miracle happens. And for McLaren, their last race win here was the first ever race here in 2012. What a fight it was that day between Hamilton and Vettel for the win. Hopefully we get something similar today. And McLaren have been pretty successful as of late when it comes to winning races. They have won 4 of the last 6 races. Lando winning 2 of the last 6 races. Of course, Oscar been very competitive himself. But let's get on to your starting grid for the US Grand Prix of 2024. On the front row, the 2 championship rivals, it's Lando Norris and Max Verstappen. On the second row, all Ferrari second row, Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. On the third row, Oscar Piastri and Pierre Gasly. What a performance by him. On the fourth row, 2 ex-McLaren drivers, Fernando Alonso and Kevin Magnussen. And then completing the top 10, Sergio Perez and someone who might replace him soon in Yuki Tsunoda. Just outside the top 10, Nico Hülkenberg and Esteban Ocon. And then you've got Lance Stroll and Alexander Albon in 13th and 14th. Franco Colapinto starts 15th with Valtteri Bottas in 16th. Lewis Hamilton, who's been so successful here in the past, is 17th on the grid with Zhou Guanyu in 18th. And then 19th and last on the grid is Liam Lawson. And then 20th and last overall is George Russell. He will be starting from the pit lane. I've just remembered that I've not done the order. So let me just remember to do that. Put the order in the correct order. I knew I forgot to do something ahead of this stream. So I'll just quickly do that for you guys. Of course, it'll be a 56-lap Grand Prix. Formation lap will be underway very shortly. And it should be a good one. And most people should be starting as Hamilton on the radio saying, damn, this is far back. Obviously not used to starting this far back here in Austin. The medium compound tyre yesterday performed pretty well. So I think we're going to see the medium compound tyre on most cars. Let me just get this complete. And there you go. And obviously when we know who is on what compound of tyre, I will make sure to update that. But again, I am expecting most drivers to be on the medium compound of tyre. And then at some point, they'll go onto the hard tyre. But it should be 2 sets of mediums. And then, again, at some point, the hard tyre being used. If you're in a close race to the end, you really don't want to be on the hard tyre. Because even though it's durable, it is pretty slow. as the formation lap begins right now. And Norris is on the medium. It looks like almost or pretty much the top 10 are on the medium compound tyre. And I'll find out the tyre situation in a moment. Rooksfoot saying, everyone on mediums except Stroll, Colapinto, Hamilton, Lawson, and Russell, who are on the hards. Right, so let me just update that. And then, hold on, Hamilton, Colapinto, and Stroll, I believe he said. And there you go. So those are the tyres. Obviously, during the race, I'll update positions and who is on what compound as we go along. As we're about halfway through the formation lap. On what is, again, a cracking day. No wind. A perfect day for racing. As the front of the field have just completed the middle sector. And cheers, by the way, to you guys liking the stream as much as you have. 158 likes, absolutely fantastic. Let's try, if we can, and get up to, say, 180 likes, say, in the next half an hour. That'd be great if we could do that. So if you haven't hit the like button yet, make sure to do so. Obviously, it does help the channel grow. And it helps show me that you guys enjoy the content. So make sure to smash the like button. As the front of the field are just coming through the final corner right about now. And it is a long way until pole position. And then the climb, obviously, up to turn 1. And as we have seen many times here at COTA, if you start second, you're usually leading on the exit of the first corner. And if that happens today, then that could be very well game, set, and match when it comes to who wins this race. As that is George Russell was saying on the broadcast on the hard tyre, still in his garage, and he's just now going to drive up to the exit of the pit lane. As the front few cars just lining up on the grid now. As we're on board with the Haas of, I think, Nico Hulkenberg. And there towards the rear of the field, just coming through the final corner. On the end of this formation lap is Liam Lawson, back in Formula 1. Sad for him that he's had a grid penalty, but that's because of whatever Ricciardo incurred with power unit parts. But thankfully, he's back, Lawson, where he belongs. But this US Grand Prix, it never disappoints. And let's hope it is the same yet again as the green flag waves at the back and the lights are on. It's 3, 4, 5 lights. And it's go in Texas. And Max Verstappen has got a decent start as Lando Norris moves to the middle of the track. And Verstappen dives to the inside. He's caught Lando unawares. And Lando's gone off the track. And Max got held up. Meanwhile, a Ferrari races into the lead. And I think it's, I don't know which Ferrari. I think it might be Carlos Sainz. Leads for Ferrari in Texas to the delight of the Tifosi worldwide and especially at the track. But it's Ferrari leading from Verstappen second, and Norris is down to 4th place. The start could not have gone any worse, but I'm sure he's going to say he was pushed off the track by Verstappen, and we'll see a replay. But there's a lot of racing going on down at the turn 10 right before the back straight. But I think it's Carlos Sainz in the lead. No, it isn't. It's Leclerc as a Ferrari dives down the inside of Verstappen. And Verstappen forced to go off the track and keeps his position. But the Ferrari of Sainz it is, trying to come back at Verstappen now round the outside for turn 14, I think that is. But Verstappen keeps it. I think Verstappen will be allowed to keep that position because I do think he was forced off the track. But Ferrari, what a start. Leclerc leading and Verstappen having to defend for his life in second as we're on lap 2 of 56. And Leclerc for Ferrari leads by 1.5 seconds. Verstappen second, Sainz third, Norris fourth, Piastri fifth, Gasly sixth, Magnussen seventh, Tsunoda up to 8th, and then Perez 9th, Alonso 10th. Alonso's had a terrible start. And then you got Hülkenberg 11th, Lewis Hamilton up to P12. 5 positions gained for Hamilton on the hard tyre. That is an amazing start. And also amazing for Liam Lawson, who's up to 14th from 19th. And then you got Zhou up to 15th. And then Colapinto, Bottas, and then Albon, Russell, and Ocon is at the back. I wonder if Ocon might have got tangled up with someone. Remember, DRS is already active as we're on lap 2 as Sainz closes in on Verstappen down to turn 12. And Verstappen forced to defend as that Ferrari is very quick down the back straight. As Sainz gets a decent exit. And can he get a good switchback here on the end of this slow speed section? No, he can't to overtake. But all this defending Verstappen is having to do is only helping Charles Leclerc, who leads by still 1.5 seconds. Verstappen has still gained, though, on Leclerc by, I think, 2 or 3 tenths of a second. So Verstappen is coming back. As, Lewis Hamilton's dropping down the order. There's been a yellow flag as the Ferrari locks up there. We've cut away because Lewis Hamilton has beached himself in the gravel at the same corner where George Russell crashed yesterday. But yeah, Ferrari locked up into turn 1. I think it might have been Carlos Sainz, or it might have been Leclerc, because Verstappen a bit closer now, just over a second behind. But Hamilton in the gravel, and I think that's going to be at least a virtual safety car. And Hamilton out of this race, a disaster of a weekend that really sums up what most of this season has been for him. As still a yellow flag, and now full safety car. As Lewis Hamilton gets out of his car and is out of the US Grand Prix, a race that he used to win year after year. He had I think a 4 race wins in a row streak here at one point, but times are different. And he is out. What a disaster. But let me just update that we've got, so Stroll on the hard tyre, Lawson on the hard, Zhou on the medium, Colapinto on the hard, and then Bottas on the medium, Albon I think is on the medium as well, and then Russell on the hard. Here's a replay of the start we're just seeing. And yeah, Verstappen dives up the inside of Norris. And I don't think Lando was pushed off. I know he's going to claim it. I can already hear the radio message complaining that he was pushed off the track. But I don't think he was. Max had got the position and Lando tried to drive around Max by going off the track. But because Max got a bit tangled, not literally, but kind of with Lando, Leclerc, who started 4th, overtook 3 cars at turn 1. All on the exits. Yeah, Max gets the move on Lando, but then leaves the inside open, and Leclerc says, "Thank you very much. I'll be on my way." Leclerc, of course, started on pole here last year and lost the lead up to turn 1. So that's good revenge for him, as here's a replay of Albon making contact with Ocon. That's why Ocon and Albon are towards the back of the field. And that is how it all played out at turn 1. But yeah, for Lando, he just didn't cover off the inside line. If you go and look at the sprint race, at the start of the sprint race, Max, when he was on pole, covered off the inside line immediately because he knew he had to do that. Lando, though, didn't bother. As Lewis, again, it's a similar thing to what Russell did yesterday. Turned into the penultimate corner and then spun, but it kind of looked like there was an issue with the rear end of that car. It was unusual. But nonetheless, Lewis Hamilton is out of the Grand Prix. But like I say with Lando, you know, Max, at the start of the sprint race, Max covered off the inside line immediately because he knows the inside line is so good for getting up into the lead. Lando, like, half-heartedly covered the inside line, but still left a car's width. And then Verstappen obviously is going to take it because he's Max Verstappen. And then he takes the position, and eventually Lando ends up in 4th. Just not good enough from Lando Norris. That is not a good enough defense. You cannot half-heartedly defend your position against a driver that elite and a monster really on track like Verstappen. If you half-heartedly defend, you're going to get eaten up on track. And Norris got eaten alive at the start and is in 4th. And I'd be surprised, honestly, at this point, if Lando moved up from this position, because Ferrari have already looked pretty strong so far in this race. As Alexander Albon has pitted for a new front wing, I'm guessing. So we'll see what compound he's on soon. But safety car still out. I'll let you know when the safety car is going to be coming back in. But your top 10 on lap 5 of 56 with a safety car. It is Leclerc in the lead. Verstappen 2nd, Sainz 3rd, Norris 4th, Piastri 5th, Gasly 6th, Magnussen 7th, Tsunoda 8th, Perez 9th, and Alonso 10th. Here's a replay from Max's onboard on the broadcasting. Again, Lando half-heartedly defends the inside, doesn't fully cover it. He should have aggressively come over and covered the inside line. He would have sent a clear message to Max that you ain't coming for that inside line. But he didn't. He left the gap, and Max, as usual, goes for it because that's what Max does. As the safety car is in this lap, by the way. And here's a replay of Sainz diving down the inside of Verstappen and definitely pushed Max off the track. Sainz even went off the track. So, yeah, there won't be any reason to penalise anyone for that. As Leclerc now becomes the safety car. As Yanni's saying in the chat, Lando can't race. He can drive fast, qualify well, but racing isn't in him. Progressively, we are seeing more evidence of that. So you can't exactly argue against it. But there is still time for Lando to reclaim positions and maybe show the racing quality he has. But it's going to be tough. As Leclerc, when will he decide to leather it? He decides now as he gets going through the penultimate corner. Max has kept up with him, though, and is really on the back of him as they exit the final corner and begin lap 6 of 56. And Verstappen up to turn 1. Will he go for the move? Leclerc smartly covers it because he knows all about Max Verstappen. Been racing him for years. But Max is all over the back of Leclerc as they enter the first sector S's section. So Max As soon as DRS becomes enabled, he is going to be past that Ferrari. As Liam Lawson, I've just seen, has passed Lance Stroll on the restart. So brilliant start from Lawson, from 19th to 12th. And he's on a compound that, if it performs well, the hard compound, he could be a contender for points. As old Stroll has lost a couple more positions. Stroll now down to 16th. Maybe Stroll's got an issue. As they come down the back straight, no overtakes being made from what I can see. As at the very back, we've got Ocon and Russell racing hard. And you've got the Williams there. And Lance Stroll has been overtaken by these three as well. So yeah, I think Stroll might have an issue as the Williams trying to pass Ocon there, but getting the door slammed shut as Stroll goes way off the track there to regain position. So Stroll in 18th as we begin lap 7. And Charles Leclerc, what a rest of the lap he had. He's now pulled the gap up to 1.2 seconds. And Carlos Sainz, now DRS will be enabled. Carlos Sainz is within a second of Verstappen, so Max has got to get away from Carlos, because if he gets engaged in that battle, he'll lose ground on Leclerc. As Stroll seems to be okay now, but he's in 18th as opposed to 12th, where he was on the restart. But let me just update who is on what compound. Zhou is on the medium. And then we've got Colapinto on the hard tyre. Bottas on the medium. Russell on the hard tyre. Ocon on the medium. Stroll on the hard. And Albon on the medium. Albon has pitted. Side by side, we've got Hülkenberg overtaking Fernando Alonso and comfortably overtaking, and Hülkenberg should pull away. The Haas car is quicker. As the Red Bull there, Perez right up behind Tsunoda, who's in a bit of a train. As Lando Norris, by the way, has already dropped 2 seconds behind Carlos Sainz, who is only right behind Max Verstappen. So Lando, no pace at the moment. As we're on lap 8 of 56. Leclerc 1.4 clear of Verstappen as they exit turn 1. And through the S's they come, and Sainz must have made a mistake somewhere because he's dropped a lot of time and he's now 1.3 seconds behind Verstappen. Maybe in the dirty air, may have just got out of shape. But that's great news for Verstappen, who can now focus on attacking the Monegasque in the lead. And it's better for this race that we've got Ferrari leading, because Ferrari were the closest team on pace to Red Bull in the sprint race. So it's going to be tougher for Max to pass Leclerc than it would have been Norris. Not just because Leclerc's a better driver, but also Ferrari look like they've got a faster car than McLaren. As Perez here, still behind Tsunoda. Clearly got way more pace, but he can't use it at the moment. And really just a gigantic train through the field from Pierre Gasly all the way down to Alex Albon at the very back. That's how close it is in Formula 1 in the midfield. Here's a replay of Lawson, how he passed Stroll on the exit of turn 1. And round the outside he went. And obviously made it the inside line for the S's. And then that's how Stroll lost position. He went wide at turn 9, went through a bit of a grass and gravel, and then he lost a load of position. So, poor mistake from Stroll, but Aston Martin's day going from bad to worse As leaving the track and gaining an advantage has been noted between Stroll and Albon. I think that's when Stroll went off to regain the position. As on lap 9, Leclerc pulling away from Verstappen, the gap up to 2.4 seconds. So Leclerc really quick. As Carlos Sainz saying no power on the exit of the corners, no power. The response is copy. We do see no option at the moment. Carlos saying, yeah, but it's costing us. They say, I know. And then Carlos says it smells like fuel. So Carlos Sainz, unfortunately, can't utilise the great pace Ferrari have because it looks like he's got a problem. That is a shame because he has been great this weekend. And if he had the power, maybe he could be passing Max Verstappen, who continues to drop behind Leclerc. Leclerc nearly 3 seconds ahead of Verstappen now. Gap up to 2.9 at the end of lap 9. Sainz says it smells a lot like fuel in the car. So, I don't know what that could be. But on lap 10, Leclerc pulls away by another half a second. Leclerc on fire. And we have seen in the second half of this season, Leclerc has been unbelievably good. He's probably been the best driver on the grid since the summer break. Because, oh, that's a Sauber spinning at turn 1. And it's Zhou Guan Yu. He was in a good position and then such a silly spin. And that sums up his F1 career. Absolute shit. And he's gone from 13th to 19th. Poor mistake. And that's ultimately why he will probably find his way out of the sport, because that just isn't good enough, I'm afraid. But let me just update the tyre compounds quickly. But who's on what? And Leclerc 3.1 clear now of Verstappen and continuing to pull away. So I don't know if Max has got damage or maybe Leclerc is just pushing a lot harder, but Leclerc is on fire as Ferrari tells Sainz driver default Delta 16. Obviously trying to reset whatever issue is in there. As on lap 11, the gap goes up another half a second. Leclerc leading now by 3.5 seconds. And as I've said, Leclerc, since the summer break, I don't think you could really argue against it. Leclerc has been the best driver on the grid since we returned to Zandvoort in late August. Obviously won brilliantly in Monza. Probably should have won in Baku if it wasn't for Piastri's unbelievable performance. And is looking really good to win here. As Carlos Sainz, I think, may have sorted that issue. It says now, as you can see, it seems better keep hanging in there. Yeah, his pace has picked up. He's catching Verstappen again, and Lando Norris is falling away. So it seems as though whatever issue he had might have gone, which is great news for him and for Ferrari. As Leclerc now 4 seconds clear of Verstappen. This is an incredible performance. As Liam Lawson, Fernando Alonso's number 1 enemy at the minute, has just overtaken Alonso for 11th place, which I'm sure will please Alonso, no doubt. As, yeah, lap 12, Leclerc 4.1 seconds clear of Verstappen. Where is Red Bull's pace? They've got to find it if it's there. Because Leclerc, at this rate, he's going to win comfortably. But, yeah, Lawson is now ahead of Alonso. And Lawson only 2.5 seconds off the points on the hard tyre, which is performing well. Lawson is in a brilliant position. And Alonso, meanwhile, is just going to continue dropping back through the field because that car doesn't have any pace. And here's a replay of how he got it done. And round the outside at turn 13. Brilliant from Liam Lawson, who right there proving why he is good enough to be on the grid. What a start he's had. Started 19th and now it's lap 12 and he's 11th. And just absolutely mugged off a legend of our sport. As Leclerc, 4.5 seconds clear of Verstappen. The reason I keep saying the gap and I'm sounding just amazed is because I am amazed. We did not see this coming. As Piastri was just asked on the radio to feedback on plan A, and Piastri responded, ambitious. So clearly he does not think that whatever plan A is doable, which maybe was a 2-stop. Maybe McLaren might have to do a 3-stop. But on lap 13, Charles Leclerc is 5 seconds clear of Max Verstappen. And at this rate, Leclerc has got the race almost bought and paid for. Doesn't have to worry about an undercut from Verstappen. He's too far behind. And Ferrari just got to keep Leclerc out there and wait until Max pits. Because at this rate, they're pulling away. There's no reason to come in or do anything different. They are looking incredibly good. And if Carlos Sainz can try and get back after Verstappen, Ferrari could make this a 1-2 today with this sort of pace. As we're looking at the Mercedes of Russell stuck in 15th. And the reason he's in 15th and he's stuck there is because he's in a DRS train. And the Mercedes just isn't quite quick enough down the straights to break it. But, Russell getting close now to Bottas. Will he go for it? Kind of half-heartedly does at turn 12, but he gets the position. Bottas goes off the track and puts himself back up the inside. Does he? Not quite. As Ferrari telling Leclerc, if you keep this gap up to Verstappen, we are happy with plan A. As he pulls away by another half a second, 5.5 seconds, the gap is now on lap 14. As Russell is now ahead of Valtteri Bottas. But Russell having a pretty tough race out there. But he is on the hard compound tyres, so he's going to go longer into this race, and his race hasn't played out yet. So let's give him some time. As Zhou Guanyu has pitted, so he's the first to pit. As Verstappen on the radio, don't know what he's saying because they're not showing what he's saying. But at the minute, Leclerc and Ferrari have got this race in the bag for the moment if they keep this pace up. Sainz still not that far behind Verstappen. Lando Norris, though, in 4th, is not in the fight here for a podium. He's too slow. He's 3 seconds off Sainz and a further 1.8 behind Verstappen. So, really, the main fight here is Verstappen versus Sainz for 2nd. As here is Russell, who passes Colapinto for 13th. So Russell starting to break the DRS train now as Zhou has gone onto another set of mediums. As Russell has been noted for forcing another driver off the track. I'd have to see a replay, to be honest, but I don't think he did. But Leclerc now 6.1 clear. And I'm just trying to see. You need about, 22 seconds to make a pit stop. here at the Circuit of the Americas, and Max, if he was to pit now, would come out. He would come out probably around where Alonso and Russell are, so he can't really afford to make a pit stop, because really what Red Bull need is to pit, because clearly in this stint of the race they have not got any pace. So they need to try something, but yeah, Red Bull, they can't pit now because they'll be in a load of traffic and they won't be able to utilize fresher tyres, and that'll be playing into Ferrari's hands, because Carlos Sainz could probably go a lap or so longer to try and get past Verstappen when he makes his pit stop. So until a gap becomes available, Max Verstappen is going to continue losing half a second a lap to Leclerc, who is now 6.6 seconds clear of Verstappen as Leclerc begins another lap. But whoever said in the chat they had a good feeling about Leclerc winning today, or Ferrari winning today, you are looking handsome at the moment, as George Russell has been given a 5-second time penalty for forcing Valtteri Bottas off the track. Again, I need to see a replay because I wasn't sure if it was a clear slam dunk. Let's see. This is an off-board overhead replay. I'm not... maybe you could say it is. For me, that's not a clear pushing off the track. I think Bottas could have got out of that one rather than go off the track. But talking on Valtteri Bottas, he has just made his pit stop. And now has come out in 18th place. And has come out as well on the hard compound tyre. So Bottas on the hard. And then we've got Albon on the medium. Stroll on the hard. And Ocon on the medium. As Russell in 13th, now stuck behind Fernando Alonso. And on lap 17, Leclerc still miles clear of Verstappen. Don't know what the exact gap is because they're not showing it, but he's still, to my knowledge, pulling away. And yeah, the gap is 7 seconds. One thing I was going to say, and Mercedes saying on the radio to Russell, total joke with the penalty. Yeah, I'm not sure that's a 5-second penalty. I'm not sure about that. One thing I was going to say is, we have seen in the last few races, Ferrari have been stronger with their race pace than with their qualifying pace. Saw that at Monza. In Baku, they were dominating until the first pit stop, and they were unbelievably quick. And even in Singapore, they had very strong pace, especially in the second half of that race. And yet again, we are seeing that Ferrari, with their race pace, are very, very strong. And to the point where they are easily winning this race. 7 seconds clear of Verstappen on lap 17. And Leclerc is nearly half a pit stop ahead of Verstappen. If Leclerc was to pit now, he would come out as, Sergio Perez goes down the inside of Yuki Tsunoda at turn 12, and Russell in the background has passed Alonso. As Tsunoda desperately trying to come back at Perez to prove a point. But Perez should keep it, and he does. As, Russell up to 12th on lap 18 of 56. And Leclerc pulling away by another half a second. But I was going to say, with Leclerc, if he was to pit now, he would come out probably in between Gasly and Magnussen. So if Leclerc can clear Gasly from his pit window in the next 2 to 3 laps, then Leclerc has all the options on strategy. As Kevin Magnussen pits from 7th place, clearly looking to try and get past Gasly with an undercut. So Magnussen is now down to 17th. And this is where the pit stop phase is going to begin. And yeah, Leclerc is... actually, Leclerc is way ahead of Gasly. He's 25 seconds ahead. So Leclerc would actually come out ahead of Gasly if he pitted now. So for Leclerc, he has, like I said, all the room to do whatever he wants. Max Verstappen, not necessarily. As this is Hülkenberg and Tsunoda racing over 8th place through turn 12 and 13. The Haas clearly quicker. Will Hülkenberg get a move done? As Tsunoda going slow into turn 14. And Hülkenberg keeps the inside line, but he's going to have to lift because Tsunoda was going to squeeze him there. As Tsunoda keeps the position. But if that was a penalty for Russell, then Tsunoda might be getting a penalty there because that looked a bit pushing off the track like. As Pierre Gasly pits from 6th, that will help Max Verstappen because now he probably can pit and come out in clear air. And we'll see as Tsunoda has pitted as well. We'll see where Gasly comes out in relation to Magnussen. And Magnussen he's done it. He's got the jump on Gasly. So Magnussen does the undercut. So Tsunoda is now in 17th place. The tyre information, by the way, on the screen isn't correct. I will make sure to correct it as soon as I can once the pit stops calm down. But yeah, lap 19, about to be lap 20. Leclerc, 8.2 seconds clear of Max Verstappen. And Leclerc is still quite far behind in the championship. He's not going to win the championship, but with the form that Ferrari have got, he could finish 2nd in the championship. As he begins lap 20 and is truly owning this race. As Max Verstappen, I am surprised, has not come in. I think a Red Bull probably at this point have given up in terms of fighting for the win. Leclerc is too far ahead of them, nearly half a pit stop ahead. Their focus is on Carlos Sainz, who's a couple seconds behind Verstappen, just under a couple seconds behind. So they need to really cover off Sainz. And I think Max really should, in the next lap or so, should come in to cover off the undercut, because if I'm Ferrari, I would go for the undercut with Carlos Sainz. I'd go for it. I'd go for it at the end of this lap because it is absolutely worth it. If they want the 1-2 Ferrari, they've got to do it. As we're seeing here, midfield battle. I think, was it Albon and Magnussen over 14th? Obviously, Albon has pitted, but he pitted quite a long time ago. But up in the top 10 now, you've got Lawson and Russell on the hard compound tyre. Obviously haven't pitted. Alonso on the medium. Colapinto on the hard. Ocon on the medium. And then Stroll on the hard. Albon on the medium. And then everyone below on the hard compound of tyre. As on lap 21, Leclerc, yet again, another half a second And Carlos Sainz does not pit, surprisingly. He is slowly closing back in on Verstappen, but I don't know why Ferrari are not going for the undercut. They've got the gap, surely. Well, let me just check. Have they got the gap? 3, 7, 13. I think if they pit now, they will come out ahead of Hulkenberg with Sainz, just about by a second or so. And then they've got a couple seconds to Sergio Perez. That might be, though, part of Ferrari's thinking that they don't want to pit him yet because they think maybe Sergio Perez, who's in 6th place, will maybe be kept out on purpose by Red Bull to hold up Carlos Sainz. So if they can clear Perez out of the pit window, then they might go for the pit stop as Russell overtakes Liam Lawson and goes up to 8th place as Leclerc on lap 22, nearly 9 seconds clear. As Carlos Sainz does pit, so they're going to go for it. And the pit stop goes well. 2.6 seconds. And now it needs to be the outlap of his life. And if he does it, surely he will be neck and neck at the very least with Verstappen. And will he get out ahead of Perez? Yes, he does. And that's why they pitted him, because they saw they could get out ahead of Perez. And that is crucial because Carlos Sainz now has 13.5 seconds of clear air. Exactly what he needs. So Sainz comes out in 5th as Kevin Magnussen has just overtaken Alex Albon for 14th place. And Sainz now on the hard compound tyre. As a replay there of Magnussen, was that how he passed Albon? No, this is how went down the inside at turn 15, I think that was. As Verstappen, who is 9.5 seconds behind Leclerc now, surely they have got to bring him in. If they don't, they're making the same mistake they did back in Hungary, where they left Verstappen out and he got undercut and then race ruined. As down the inside goes Franco Colapinto on Alonso. Brilliant move as the Williams fishtailing around, but he keeps it all together. And Colapinto stays ahead. Brilliant move by the young Argentinian, and he's up to P10. As Verstappen stays out. Why? They're doing the same thing they did in Hungary. And it's not going to work. Yeah, Verstappen will have fresher tyres, but, you know, catching is one thing, passing is another, as we saw back in Hungary. Yeah, Colapinto can now sprint away on his hard tyres. He's going to obviously go longer into the race than Alonso. As Stroll has now been overtaken by Kevin Magnussen. I've just seen. As Verstappen 10 seconds off the lead now. So, unless something wild happens, Charles Leclerc has got this race won. 10 seconds clear of Max Verstappen. Even if Verstappen pitted now, Leclerc would not necessarily have to respond to it immediately. Leclerc could wait 2 or 3 laps. That's how comfortable he is. As here's a replay of Magnussen diving down the inside of Stroll. And Magnussen knows he has to be aggressive because he's pitted earlier. And to make the strategy work, he's got to be aggressive as Verstappen has stayed out again. As Carlos Sainz does the fastest lap, a 1:38.7. Again, Verstappen will have fresher tyres, but will that be enough to stop Sainz completing a Ferrari 1-2? I'm not sure. Because again, we saw this back in Hungary where Red Bull got undercut by Mercedes and Hamilton, and I think by maybe someone else, I can't remember exactly. And then Max was unable to get back into the position he was in because he was undercut, and Max rightfully complained about it. But they're doing the same thing here, as Lando Norris is actually slowly gaining on Verstappen. And according to AWS, if Verstappen pitted now, he would come out about a second behind Carlos Sainz, as he's nearly 11 seconds off the lead now on lap 25, almost halfway through this US Grand Prix. And Verstappen stays out, as Ferrari asking Leclerc, how many more laps can you do at this pace? And Charles says, I'm okay like this, but yeah, let's focus on plan. Was that plan C? I couldn't quite tell from what I saw there. But with Leclerc, all they have to do, as there's a slight snap of oversteer there, all they've got to do with Leclerc is cover off Verstappen. That's all they've got to do, because Leclerc is that far ahead that he doesn't have to worry about him. But, you know, you don't want to leave him out too long. But I think Ferrari will be bringing Leclerc in soon, because Carlos Sainz obviously is going very quickly out there, and it will get to the point where Sainz will get close to Leclerc in the pit window, because Sainz is currently 26 seconds behind, but as Sainz is going along, that gap will keep coming down. So in the next 5 laps, Leclerc will pit, but Verstappen definitely will pit sooner. But McLaren, you know, after that disastrous start, not really done anything, but they are now coming back into this, and Lando Norris continues to gain on Max Verstappen. The gap down to 2.5 seconds. And Max Verstappen finally comes into the pits. And what tyres is he going to go on to? A set of hard compound tyres. And he will come out behind Carlos Sainz and in 5th place. Here comes Carlos Sainz, blasting past, and it is now a net Ferrari 1-2. Can Verstappen prevent total domination by the Scuderia? We're about to find out in the second half of this Grand Prix. But McLaren, I think, no, they're not going to win today. Lando's 13.5 seconds behind Leclerc. There's no way of him catching up. McLaren, I think, are probably going to go longer into this race to try and come back at Verstappen and Sainz that way. As Leclerc, smartly, Ferrari tell him to box, immediately covering off what just happened. And what a drive by Leclerc so far. And no matter what happens between now and the end of this race, he 100% deserves to win this. He has been absolutely brilliant from the start he did to just everything. He has been perfect. And a perfect pit stop there for Ferrari. 2.5 seconds. And he will come out in 3rd place in between Piastri and Sainz. And will be quite far ahead of the net 2nd place man, Carlos Sainz. But now it is a McLaren 1-2. And McLaren, I don't think will be that long until they make their pit stop, as Perez in the pits now is what we're seeing here. We're seeing Stroll and Albon racing side by side, as this is I think, is this Albon overtaking Stroll? I think it is. And Gasly now trying to overtake as they come up to turn 1. And Stroll is going around the outside. Albon's got the inside line. Gasly's trying to overtake the pair of them. But Stroll keeps ahead. So there you go. But Fernando Alonso has just pitted. He's come out in 18th place. And Sergio Perez has pitted and he's come out in 11th place. As Magnussen is up to 10th now. As this battle rages on between Stroll, Albon and Gasly. And this is really hurting Gasly's race, who was up in 6th. Magnussen's undercut him, and Magnussen has just sprinted off into the distance. So Magnussen is heading for, well, not 6th place, because Sergio Perez is just pitted, is about to pass him in probably a couple laps. But as Gasly round the outside of Albon, can he get the move done? He does it. Might have been off the track, but he's done the move. As a pit stop for Nico Hülkenberg. That pushes him down from 6th. He's now going to be outside the top 10. As Russell goes up to 6th, with Lawson 7th, Colapinto 8th. And Hülkenberg comes out in 12th place. So he has also jumped Gasly. So both Haas's have jumped Gasly. So Haas, I think, are in a net 7th and 8th now, which is the result really they're aiming for, because they know realistically that's the best they can get. As Stroll was pitted and is going to come out in 18th place, I'm pretty sure. As Russell and Lawson 6th and 7th on the hard compound tyre. Most people on that tyre now. As Perez down the inside of Magnussen at turn 12. As Leclerc does the fastest lap, a 1:38.6 on lap 29 now. And McLaren, I'm pretty sure, are going to be pitting one of their cars, probably Oscar Piastri, you would hope would be coming in the next couple laps, because he's about to be passed by Leclerc. I think it's best they bring him in a couple laps. Norris, though, they could probably still keep him out for another few laps, because he's still quite far ahead of his teammate and Leclerc. But Perez is in 9th place. And then we've got Gasly 13th, Tsunoda 14th, Albon 15th, Bottas 16th, and then Alonso, Zhou, and Stroll rounding out the field. Aston Martin have pitted a bit later than everyone else, but still in really poor positions. They need to recover now. As black and white flag for Pierre Gasly, I've just seen. As we're now on lap 30 out of 56. And as we're just over halfway through the race, just wanted to say, guys, quickly, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, because we do watch-alongs on this channel. for most of the F1 sessions. So make sure to subscribe for more content like this. And if you haven't already, smash that like button. We are on 189 likes. Let's get up to 200 likes if we can by the end of this race. And if maybe let's get up to 220 likes if we can by the end of this race. That'd be great if we could do that. Todd asking, are the leaders trying a one-stop? I think McLaren with Lando Norris, definitely, I think at this point, they not only, I think, are trying to do a one-stop, I think they should, because that's the only hope they have of finishing, say, third or even second. As Leclerc, now within a second of Piastri, Leclerc has got to pass Piastri very soon because he doesn't want to get held up, because that will just help Lando in the lead even more. I don't, if Lando goes for a one-stop strategy, I don't think that's going to affect Leclerc, because I think Leclerc's too quick, honestly, to be affected by that. But it will have an effect on the battle for second between, Norris, Sainz, and Verstappen. But yeah, McLaren, we know, we've seen it. Their tyre wear is really good. They are the best at managing their tyres. And that's why they're still 31 laps in to this race without stopping. As Leclerc needs a good exit. And let's see how hard Piastri will defend. As Leclerc, by the way, is about 6.5 seconds clear of Sainz. And Piastri is not going to bother defending and pretty much lets Leclerc through. As Max Verstappen, by the way, even though Max is on fresher tyres, is 3.9 seconds behind Sainz and has not gained on Sainz really at all in the last couple laps from what I've seen. So, as I said, with Red Bull, they had to cover off the undercut and they didn't. And it's now going to cost Verstappen an extra at least 3 points, maybe more, as Norris oversteers his way into the pit lane. And on the end of lap 31, beginning of lap 32, Lando Norris pits for probably the only time in this race. Can he now come back at his championship rival? So Leclerc in the lead, Piastri still out there, of course. Sainz third, Verstappen fourth. Norris will come out on the hard tyres in fifth. As Hulkenberg, by the way, has passed Ocon for 11th. Sonoda and Albon noted for forcing another driver off the track. Just seeing that. So everyone in the top 10 is on the hard tyre except for Oscar Piastri, who hasn't pitted yet. Let me just update that he is on the medium. He will pit at the end of lap 32, no doubt about it. It's Esteban Ocon, who was on the mediums. He now comes in, finally, as he now goes onto a set of hard tyres. And Ocon probably will come out last, but he will be on pretty nice tyres. But yeah, Lando Norris, I'll check what the gap is in a moment. As Piastri told to box, as Ocon has actually come out 17th. So a couple positions gained for him there, as Leclerc begins lap 33, and Oscar Piastri in the pit lane. Piastri is heading surely for 5th place. Not a great pit stop there, or actually it was a good pit stop, 2.6 seconds. The only way Piastri finishes ahead of where he's at now, which is 5th, is if the tyres absolutely fall off a cliff for Sainz and Verstappen. If that happens, then Oscar might be able to get 4th or even up onto the podium. But now Oscar is pitted. It is now, on lap 33, a Ferrari 1 and 2. Leclerc leads by 7.5 seconds as a 5-second time penalty for Pierre Gasly for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. So his race is absolutely screwed over now. Yeah, Leclerc in the lead, 7.5 seconds clear of Carlos Sainz. Sainz about 4 seconds clear of Verstappen. And Verstappen about 6.5 seconds clear of Lando Norris. The last time Ferrari had a 1-2 in America was... Actually, I'll do a bit of trivia. Let me know, when was the last time Ferrari had a 1-2 in America, guys? I know when it was. But I want to see how smart you guys are. Without using, of course, Wikipedia. Please don't try to do that. But I'll just correct some of the tyres quickly. As fastest lap for Lando Norris on lap 34. And there you go. So all the tyres, all the tyre information on the screen is now correct. As we're just 4 likes away, by the way, from 200 likes. So let's make sure we get up to that before the end of this Grand Prix. 22 laps to go. As Lando Norris starting to gain on Max Verstappen. That's the big fight to look out for, of course, regarding the championship. As Alex Albon pits for the second time. Obviously, out of sequence he is, because he pitted on like lap 3 or whatever for a new front wing. As we're looking at Red Bull of Perez behind Colapinto. What is going to be interesting is when Russell, Lawson and Colapinto pit, to see their pace on fresh medium tyres in the last bit of this race. As Leclerc responds and does the fastest lap himself. Leclerc, by the way, and now Lando Norris does the fastest lap of the race. 1:38.0. Only a couple tenths of a second quicker than Leclerc. On quite a bit fresher tyres. Just shows you how quick Leclerc is. To be only that much slower on quite a bit older tyres. But Leclerc is... what, 16 seconds clear of Norris? So Lando's going to have to do something quite incredible to win this race. He's not going to. There's no way he's going to catch Leclerc unless he starts gaining at a second per lap. But for George Russell, he is still out there in 6th place, hasn't pitted. Things might get close between Russell and Perez for 6th place at the end of this race. Because at the minute, if Russell was to pit, he would come out maybe ahead of Hülkenberg and not that far behind Perez. Maybe only 5 or 6 seconds behind. So Russell might actually get a top 6 here, which would be a very impressive result. Considering, obviously, started from the pit lane and he didn't exactly come through the field at great pace. As Yuki Tsunoda has got a penalty of 5 seconds for probably gaining an advantage by leaving the track, isn't it? Nope, forcing another driver off the track. So Gasly and Tsunoda are screwed in terms of being able to score points because they've both got 5-second penalties. As we're on now lap 36. Lando Norris, another fastest lap. 1:37.9. Only 4.3 behind Verstappen. He's going to catch him, but can he pass him? As the great Murray Walker said, it's one thing to catch. It's a totally different thing to pass. But let me just update Albon, because he did pit and he has come out in last place. So only 2 runners in the whole field are on the medium compound, and that is Stroll and Zhou. As we're seeing a replay here of Tsunoda when he forced Albon off, is it? Yeah, I guess. But again, it seems quite weak. The bar they're using for forcing another driver off the track. It's not exactly, something Michael Schumacher would have done in his heyday or anything like that. Max saying on the radio, these tyres just aren't good. I can't brake. I can't attack anything. And that is why, even though Max pitted later than Sainz, he's actually going slower than Sainz. We've seen this before, haven't we? Baku, Monza, we saw this, where even on fresher tyres, Max had absolutely no pace. And the Red Bull just struggling with race pace. And McLaren, the absolute opposite. And Lando has got the gap down to 3.8 seconds. And before the end, Lando will catch Verstappen. But again, will he pass him? We'll have to see. As Liam Lawson pits from 7th. And we'll watch out for Lawson, because he might end up in the points yet. He's had a brilliant race. Now goes on to a set of mediums. And where does he come out in relation to Gasly and Tsunoda? Gasly goes past now. And he comes out just ahead of his teammate who locks up. So Lawson comes out in 11th place, which is a net 10th place. So Lawson is in a points position once it all shakes out. And once Colapinto is pitted, he will be in a points position. What a race from Liam Lawson. One of the drivers of the day, without doubt. And once Colapinto pits, and if Lawson can pass Gasly, Lawson could finish 9th in this race. Remember, he started 19th. As here's Sergio Perez ducking underneath Colapinto. And at turn 14, gets the move done. So yeah, what a drive from Lawson. And Lawson, you never know, if he has really super pace, might even go after the 2 Haas's. Obviously, Haas and Racing Bulls in a fight for the championship, for 6th in the championship. So every point matters. As Perez ahead of Colapinto. Let me just update that. Colapinto driving well. Colapinto might also get a point here. We'll have to watch out for him on fresh tyres. As Lando Norris now just 2.8 seconds behind Max Verstappen, as Verstappen continuing to drop time to Sainz even though he's on fresher tyres. Where has Red Bull's pace gone today? We'll find out after the race, but Ferrari surely are heading for a 1-2 finish at this rate. And if you're wondering, I don't know if anyone in the chat bothered to answer when the last time Ferrari finished 1-2 in America was. But the last time Ferrari got a 1-2 in the United States, it was 2006. which was the penultimate race at the Indianapolis Speedway, where Michael Schumacher won from Felipe Massa that day. And on that particular day, that's what really kick-started Ferrari's championship battle with Renault that year. Bit too late in the season, I think, for Ferrari to kick-start a championship battle on the driver's side. But on the constructor's side, if Ferrari get a 1-2 here, they could be in business. Because at the minute, they're heading for 43 points. McLaren at the minute heading for 23. And they're, 69 points behind. That's a gain of 20 points. That puts them within 50 points of McLaren with 5 races to go after this, plus a couple sprint races. Ferrari could win the Constructors' Championship. Remember, Ferrari haven't won any championship since 2008, as Kevin Magnussen has pitted again. So clearly on the 2-stop. Magnussen comes out in 13th place. And let me update that it is lap 40 as Leclerc has done a fastest lap. And here's a replay of Lawson passing Gasly, as Lawson surely is heading for a points finish on what has been an incredible drive by the young Kiwi driver. 137.8 for Leclerc, new fastest lap, even though he's on older tyres than Lando Norris in 4th, still going faster. That's just how dominant Leclerc has been today. But yeah, Lando Norris just 2.2 seconds behind now. Max Verstappen as Franco Colapinto now pits finally for Williams, and he will have just over 15 laps to go on mediums. Pit stop, all good. 3.3 seconds. Not the best pit stop, but still good enough. And he will come out right behind that gaggle of cars of Lawson, Gasly, and Tsunoda. So Colapinto absolutely can claim a point here as he comes out ahead of Kevin Magnussen. And because Colapinto, that's his only pit stop, he is genuinely ahead of Magnussen and is on now 1 lap fresher tyres. Crucial that is for Colapinto. And if he can keep ahead now, Colapinto may well get another points finish. Great fight, I have to say, in the midfield. It's really close. As now you've got Hulkenberg up to 8th, Lawson 9th, Gasly 10th, Tsunoda 11th. And I'll just update that Lawson, as Magnussen trying to attack Colapinto, now trying to go round the outside of turn 12, but there's no way that overtake's going to happen as George Russell now pits finally from 6th. And Colapinto just needs to weather the storm from Magnussen. And oh my God, what a dive bomb from Magnussen at turn 14. But he didn't pull it off as George Russell has... I've just remembered he had a 5-second penalty. That's why he's had an 8-second pit stop. So he's took his penalty. And Russell will come out in 8th place. And Russell is only about 10 seconds behind Sergio Perez. So Russell could theoretically catch and pass Perez before the end. But it's going to be tough. As that's a Racing Bulls car of Tsunoda, who I don't know if he's made contact with someone, but he's spun round on the exit of turn 1. I just looked away quickly. And Tsunoda, sadly, is out of the action. He's not out of the race, but that's a disaster for him. And he's down to 14th now as Carlos Sainz now does the fastest lap. Ferrari on absolute fire here in America and heading comfortably for a 1-2. By the way, cheers for 200 likes. Massively appreciate from you guys. And Tsunoda did exactly what Zhou did. Went too wide, went deep, and then Colapinto went deep. Distracted by Tsunoda. So lucky that they all came through without any harm done. But I need to correct that certain people are on certain tyres. Colapinto is on the mediums. And then you've got Stroll in 17th on the mediums. Zhou Guanyu has pitted. I need to update that. He's now in last position as Lando Norris is just over a second behind Max Verstappen. Even if he beats him, it's not going to be a massive gain of points for Lando, but it's something. It keeps the championship going in his favour and keeps it going. Maybe just another race. If Lando does finish ahead of Max, then he will gain 3 points, which will pretty much restore the gap to what it was coming into the weekend. Which just shows you how this weekend, even if Lando does finish in third, is a disappointing weekend for them in terms of the championship. But racing going on all over the place, and nothing is decided as of yet. So don't think this race is over, because it sure as hell isn't. As Verstappen and Norris come through turn 11. Lando just a bit too far behind to get DRS, but it's going to happen eventually as George Russell does the fastest lap now, 1:37.6. And the rate he's catching Perez, he is definitely going to pass Perez before the end. So Russell heading surely for 6th place. Unless Perez can act yet again as the Mexican Minister of Defense. But Norris here and there gaining on Verstappen. And slowly but surely closing in. And of course, one man that will be happy if Lando can finish ahead of Max is Charles Leclerc. Because that would mean an extra few points in favour of Leclerc against Verstappen. Remember, Leclerc still technically in the championship fight. Leclerc coming into this race was 89 points behind, I believe. But if Max finishes in 4th and Leclerc finishes obviously in the lead, wins the race, that gap will come down to 76 points, which keeps Leclerc in the fight. But obviously we know Leclerc's not going to win the championship unless an absolute miracle happens. But the longer Ferrari are in the championship battle, I think for them means progress, because this time last year they weren't in any sort of battle for anything. As Lando Norris is now within a second of Max Verstappen, and he opens the DRS on the back straight. He's not going to be able to overtake, but he will now close in properly, and the fight now begins. Can Max keep Lando behind for the next 12 laps? If he can, he truly is the best driver in the world, but surely Lando is going to pass him. He has more pace. Max is going to have to do something quite incredible to keep Lando at bay. As we're on lap 45 of 56. DRS open for Lando down the pit straight. I don't think he'll bother going for a move at turn 1. But he does close up and will get a good exit from the first corner. As George Russell, by the way, is about to pass Nico Hülkenberg for 7th. And needs to pass him for 7th as soon as possible if he wants to catch and pass Perez. Franco Colapinto, by the way, is about to pass Pierre Gasly, and if he does that, he'll go up into the points. Kevin Magnussen has dropped over a second behind Colapinto, so Colapinto looking good for a points finish. As here comes Norris. He's not that much closer this time around than he was compared to the previous lap. And yeah, nowhere near close enough for an overtakers. George Russell does pass Hulkenberg, and Russell 6.5 seconds behind Perez. Needs to gain a second a lap if he's going to pass the Mexican. So there you go. Russell 7th on the mediums as we're on lap 46, as Ocon has just overtaken Valtteri Bottas. Ocon, remember, on fresher tyres, just trying to come back through the field. Obviously, he's not going to finish in the points as we're on lap 46. And Lando closing in on the exit of turn 1, but he's not getting close enough, really. He needs to get close enough, as we know, out of the final corner for the back straight. Needs to make sure he's about half a second behind on that exit. And if he does, he can have a go. As Colapinto has overtaken Pierre Gasly. Franco Colapinto is up to 10th place and heading for another World Championship point. Where are those people now saying that, oh, they should have kept Logan Sargent? Absolute clowns, those people. As Norris still not close enough into turn 12, but he was closer on that occasion as Lance Stroll now passes Valtteri Bottas for 16th. And let me just update the tyre compounds for that. So Stroll on the medium and Bottas on the hard. As we're on lap 47, we've got 10 full laps remaining. Make sure to stick around, guys, for after the race, because, of course, I want to hear from you guys as to what you thought of the race. And I will be doing a Driver of the Day poll where you can let me know who your Driver of the Day is. As Norris gets a great exit from turn 1, but Verstappen still ahead enough to keep ahead. But surely, if Lando can just keep it together, he will be able to have a go at Max down the back straight in just a few corners' time. As they come through down now to turn 11. And Max deliberately going wide to get a better exit, but I don't think it worked. As Lando opens the DRS, what can Verstappen do? He defends to the inside. Lando goes for the outside line, but that is never going to work on someone like Max Verstappen. As Colapinto has just done the fastest lap of the race, the madman. 1:37.6 as Lando gets a great exit from turn 14. But can he get the switch back through turn 15 to overtake Max? He's going to try it. Will he go round the outside? No, not quite. He didn't have his car enough alongside to try that. But Colapinto, wow, fastest lap. He is just, every time we see him, he is impressing us. And he might be able to catch Liam Lawson. And maybe get an extra couple points. But Norris nowhere near Verstappen through turn 1 because, again, gets a good exit. Norris deliberately placing his car on purpose through turn 1 to get a good exit. As Norris He's close. He needs to keep as close as he can. And he's about 0.6 of a second behind. Now half a second behind as they come down to turn 11, the final corner before the back straight. What kind of exit does he get? It's not as good as the time before. He lost 0.1 on the exit that time. But he might still be able to force Max into defense. And he semi-does. Max does defend, but more defends the middle of the track. So Lando didn't really have a go. As Max, expertly placing his car, knows exactly what he's doing. And at the end of the day, in this battle, it's all about Lando Norris. It's up to him to make this move work. Max Verstappen is not going to make a mistake. And if he does not pass Max before the end of the race, then Lando mentally is absolutely finished. Because if you can't pass Verstappen between now and the end with the pace advantage he's got, you haven't got a chance. As Norris, he's going to have a go up to turn 1, gets a good exit, but it's not quite enough. Verstappen does well enough to keep ahead. As, by the way, Colapinto is genuinely catching Lawson quick enough that he could overtake Lawson for 9th. So we'll keep our eyes on that battle. As Hulkenberg, even though he's on a one-stop strategy, Hulkenberg looks like he's going to hold on for 8th. Russell still catching Perez and still should pass Perez before the end. As here comes Norris again. And nope, not close enough down to turn 12. Tantalizingly close. But ultimately not close enough to overtake. And like I said, if he cannot pass Verstappen before the end, mentally he's destroyed. Because with the pace advantage he's got, if this was Leclerc, Hamilton, Russell, I think they would get the move done. We've seen those drivers do it. But Lando, especially after what happened at the start, there is a question over his ability to race. But can he show Verstappen the way? As through turn 1, he gets a good exit again, tries to catch Verstappen unawares. There was a bit of traffic there, which wasn't great. But Max, once again, keeps his car exactly where he needs to. On lap 50, it is still Verstappen ahead of Norris. And if Verstappen does stay ahead of Norris, then surely Lando won't have enough to win this championship. As one thing this is doing is this battle, it's allowing Oscar Piastri to catch these two. Piastri catching pretty quickly. So we're going to get 2 McLarens probably behind the Red Bull of Verstappen before the end if Lando doesn't get this move done. And once again, Lando not close enough to overtake into turn 12. Max does a slight lock-up though, but keeps it all together. And this is something, you know, a repeat something we saw back in Austria. Lando there in the fight for the win. He was clearly quicker, but he had multiple chances to overtake, failed to do so, eventually ended in contact. Is he going to fail to overtake again? As Lando again forces Max to more so defend the inside line, but Lando doesn't get a great exit, to be honest. As we're on lap 51. And the fear is that Lando is, you know, the longer he spends behind Verstappen, eventually he'll settle into a pattern and won't be able to overtake. But he is quite close coming down into turn 11. Can he get the exit, though? Verstappen gets a good exit. How good is it for Lando? It's not bad. Lando's definitely going to force Max to defend this time as they come down the back straight. And Max defends to the inside. But Lando still not enough alongside to go for an overtake. Max so authoritative in defending his inside line. But Lando's got a brilliant exit from turn 14. But into 15, he just doesn't have enough momentum to get the move done. And Max keeps ahead again. Lando just needs enough momentum to edge his car ahead. And then he'll be able to get it done because he's got superior grip. We know that. And we're on lap 52 now. 5 laps remain. Ferrari heading for a 1-2. Who will join them on the podium? Norris forces Verstappen to defend again. And Lando, again, doesn't get a good enough exit to actually overtake. It's all about in terms of the overtake happening, it's all about the back straight and the corners after that. That's where it's going to happen. It's not going to happen into turn 1, I don't think, unless Max makes a mistake. But I'd be very surprised if that happened. But Lando continues to harry. But let me just update that Kevin Magnussen is up, has overtakes Pierre Gasly and up to 11th. Magnussen's still in there to a degree. As here comes Norris round the outside of Verstappen. Verstappen forces his way back up the inside. And Norris goes off the track. And Norris keeps the position. Well, we'll have to see a review of that. I think Verstappen is probably going to be saying on the radio that he overtook him off the track. And yet, he said it immediately. Overtook me outside the track. And I think he's right. I don't think Lando was pushed off. I think he overtook him off the track. As Lando not going very quickly in the final couple corners. And Verstappen might be able to just genuinely overtake him back. As they come up to turn 1 and Norris defends aggressively to the inside. That was a very late move as Verstappen tries to get a better exit to get back past. But can't. That was a very late move by Norris. We've seen Verstappen criticised for the similar driving before. As Oscar Piastri, by the way, only 3 seconds behind Verstappen. He could get involved yet in this fight, as Max saying he needs to give it back. And Lando is not bothering. Here we go. So Max puts his car at the inside. And yeah, Lando clearly drives off the track and then passes him that way. Max did not force him off. So if Lando doesn't give the position back, then he's going to get a penalty. But maybe that's what he's gambling on, is that he can pull over 5 seconds clear of Verstappen so that he can take the penalty and still finish ahead. As Red Bull tell Max, we are on it. We know we have seen also the moving under braking at turn 1. And yeah, that was very close. 3 laps to go. As we're now on board with Charles Leclerc. A lot more calm up front. As Ferrari 3 laps away from a 1-2 finish at Cota. And it'll be the 4th win of the season for Ferrari. Most wins that would be in a season for them since I think since 2022 for them. As Perez and Russell getting close now in turn 15. Russell did briefly pass Perez, but Perez got back ahead. And yeah, Norris is clearly not going to let Max back through. And if that is the case, then surely Lando has to be given a penalty because he clearly overtook him off the track, in my view. And yeah, I'm pretty confident that's going to result in a penalty for Lando. So here's a replay. Max defends to the inside. Lando had more momentum this time. Max still put his car up the inside, but then, as now under investigation, is that incident between Norris and Verstappen, and I think Norris is going to get a penalty. Looking at that replay, yeah, Max went to the edge of the track, but the fact of the matter is Max, he wasn't reckless in how he went up the inside, say like Carlos Sainz was at the start of the race at turn 12 on Verstappen. As McLaren says, our opinion is you were ahead at the apex, both cars went off track. That's not correct. Lando's saying, yeah, he also went off. No, he didn't. We literally saw it on camera. He did not go off the track. That is complete horseshit from Lando Norris. I don't know who he thinks he's falling with that. But Esteban Ocon has pitted for a second time and gone and got the fastest lap. So Ocon in 18th now, as we soon will be beginning the final lap of this race. But yeah, for me, Lando is either give the position back or, you know, you get a penalty. That's for me how it should be. Lando, the fact of the matter is, Lando went off the track to overtake Max. And at the apex, I'm not sure there was anyone ahead of the other. I'm pretty sure it was side by side. So, you know, we'll see. As we're on to the final lap, and here is George Russell overtaking Sergio Perez, and George Russell does get 6th place. What a drive from him. Best result he could possibly get, and he's got it. As Leclerc, we're on board with him, as he's making now his final tour around the circuit of the Americas, a track he's threatened to conquer before, but now he is going to conquer it. As there was just a radio message there about Lando. I think Lando being warned about track limits. Apparently they've had their 3rd strike. But Charles Leclerc, what a driver, what a driver he is. He has been, as I've said, the best driver since the summer break. Won in Monza. And there you go. Lando Norris has been given a 5-second time penalty, and he will be relegated shortly to 4th. But Leclerc, won in Monza, won in Monaco, has been close to winning in America before, but this will be his first rodeo here in Texas as he comes through the final corner, and Ferrari and Charles Leclerc win in Texas. Carlos Sainz will finish in 2nd. It will be a Ferrari 1-2. The first Ferrari 1-2 since Melbourne earlier this year. And then it will be Max Verstappen who finishes in 3rd. Lando Norris 4th. And surely, as my stream lagging a bit there, Max Verstappen Max Verstappen finishes 3rd by 9/10 of a second. Lando Norris 4th. And surely the championship is over. Max Verstappen is now 57 points clear of Lando Norris with 5 races to go, including 2 sprint races. I don't see how Lando can win this championship now. Oscar Piastri finishes in 5th, just behind the Verstappen-Norris squabble. George Russell 6th, Sergio Perez 7th, Hulkenberg 8th. Great drive for Hulkenberg, getting crucial points on the board for Haas. Liam Lawson 9th, from 19th on the grid. Last on the grid it was. And he finishes in 9th. And Franco Colapinto finishes in 10th from 15th. What a drive from him as well. And then it's Magnussen 11th, Gasly 12th, Alonso 13th, Tsunoda 14th, Stroll 15th, Albon 16th, Bottas 17th, Ocon 18th, Zhou 19th, and Lewis Hamilton, your only retirement. But that, guys, is it. It is race over. And now I will set up the poll in the chat. Actually, you know what? Quickly, before we get into the drive of the day vote, there's something else I want to find out. I'm going to do a poll asking whether you think the penalty was fair or not for Lando. Was the penalty for Norris fair or not? And the options, of course, will be yes or no. So make sure to vote in that poll. Do you think the penalty was fair for Norris? Do you think he deserved a 5-second penalty for overtaking off the track? In my view, it's a clear 5-second penalty. But maybe you have a different view. But after that, and Verstappen finishing 3rd, the championship, like I said, I think is over at this point. And it's a matter of time as to when Max Verstappen wins the championship. And probably will win it either in Las Vegas, that'd be a great place to win it, or in Qatar. That's where I think he'll win it, either one of those 2 races. Todd says, should have given the spot back right away and tried again legally. Yeah, I agree. He should have just gave it back and tried again. But I think, you know, hotter heads, or the hotter head of Norris prevailed. Needed to be calm in that situation. Let me just do this quickly and then I'll come back to you guys. As Leclerc fist pumps, hugs his team. What a drive. What a driver. Please give this guy, I know today he did have the fastest car, but please can we see him in a championship contending car consistently over the course of a season? Because this guy is special. Looney Classic says Max overtook off the track on lap 1, but Chazza didn't talk about it. Why? If you're talking about the Sainz incident, it's because Sainz did force him off the track. Carlos himself went off the track. So it's a different incident. Sprooksy says, great battle, though. It was a decent battle. But it would have been better if Lando had let him back through so they could continue it. Looney Classic says Lando will not win the chip, but he did the right thing by not giving the position back. Max did the same thing on lap 1, but no penalty. Again, it's 2 different incidents. Carlos, on the first lap, Carlos went off the track. That's why Max fairly was not given a penalty for being ahead of Sainz, because Carlos did force Max off the track. The Woden says, give Fat Zach a cheeseburger. I'll wait to the poll, by the way. I'll wait till it gets to about 100 votes, and then I'll finish the poll, because I do want to ask you guys also who your driver of the day is. Looney Classic says Max is a broad FIA favourite. David Brown says that's what matters to a Max fanboy. Here we go. Love a bit of spice in the chat. That's just the way I view the incident, and I think most people correctly view the Sainz Verstappen one at the start and what happened with Lando and Max there. I think most people will agree that Lando deserved a penalty because he clearly went off the track and kept his foot down to overtake, when Sainz went in too hot on the first lap and went off the track, pushing Max off. Rook says drive of the day, Colapinto. He's got to be up there. What a drive. Lawson as well. What a performance from the two young drivers, proving that F1 is in safe hands in the future. We have got a lot of very good young drivers out there. I'll make sure to let you know who my driver of the day is soon. The Woden says Max showed what real racecraft is all about. Yeah, Max did his job. And in the end, he got the best result he could, really. Ferrari were just way too quick, so you can't say, well, he could have won. Graham Wallace says Lawson absolutely deserves many shout-outs for his performance today. But almost 100 votes, so I'll just give it another few seconds and then I'll finish the poll up. Because we do have a clear winner in that poll, but I just want to wait till we get enough votes. Let me see some other comments here. The Woden says Sainz dive bombed Max mid-apex. He had nowhere to go. That's the difference. Yeah, Lando, with his incident, he could have backed off and tried to do like a switchback on the exit, but he didn't. He decided to just drive off the track. And there you go. We've had just over 100 votes there. So let me just read out. So, was the penalty for Norris fair or not? 67% of you have said yes. So, and I agree. I think it was fair. But now let me ask you, who is your driver of the day for the United States GP? And your options will be Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz I'll put in there as well, because obviously remember he had some problems, still overcame it, and then obviously Liam Lawson and Franco Colapinto. Or actually, no. I'm going to get rid of Sainz. I've just remembered, yeah, George Russell. So there you go. My driver of the day is Charles Leclerc. Even though Lawson, 19th to 9th, amazing drive. Colapinto as well, really, really good drive. The dominance showed by Leclerc today was just outstanding, and he was clearly the driver of the day. Beautiful move at the start, overtaking 3 cars on the exit of turn 1, and then dominated the race. And that might not be the final win of the season for Leclerc and Ferrari. And Ferrari today scored 43 points. McLaren scored 22. So Ferrari have outscored McLaren by 21 points. So the gap comes down to 48 points between Ferrari and McLaren. Ferrari, they could legitimately win the Constructors' Championship. It is possible. I still don't think it'll happen, but it is absolutely possible. And we are in for a great end to this season in terms of who will win the Constructors' Championship, which, by the way, you might not care as much about it as the driver's side, and even I don't care about it as much as the driver's side, but it is really important in terms of who wins the Constructors' Championship, and only 48 points cover the top 3 teams, as Red Bull in second are only 40 points behind McLaren. It's going to be a very exciting end to the season, and Ferrari very well could win the Constructors' Championship. Remember, Ferrari have not won the Constructors for 16 years. Jazztastic says, I like when things go well for Ferrari. Well done them. I do as well. I know, some of the most popular content has been bashing them, and it's been funny and great and that, but I want to see Ferrari be good. I don't want to see him dominate. I don't want to see anyone dominate in Formula One, but I want to see them be good. I don't want to see Ferrari be, constantly making mistakes and tripping over themselves. That, those days need to be over. As we're on, 216 likes. Thank you guys so much for all the likes today. Been brilliant. Let's try, though, if we can, and get up to, say, 225 likes. So another 10 likes or so between now and the end of the stream. And plenty of views as well. This stream is going to be on 35,000 views. At least. So, yeah, absolutely fantastic. Thank you guys so much for coming along. Been great to have you all along. And remember, I will be back next week. As I may as well finish up the poll in the chat, because I think there's a clear winner. 70 votes in total, but a clear winner of who is your driver of the day. 62% of you went for Charles Leclerc, 15% for Russell, 14% for Lawson. Surprised that Lawson wasn't ahead of Russell there. And then 7% for Franco Colapinto. Thank you guys so much for voting in that poll. And thank you guys so much for coming along to this stream, and for the stream yesterday, of course, and for the content this weekend. Just a reminder of the content coming up on the channel. I should have mentioned this before, but I did talk about a month ago in Singapore. I did talk about how I was working on a video on Lando Norris. I was set to publish this video. I was almost finished with it a few days ago, but then I remembered that if Verstappen and Red Bull's upgrade, or Red Bull's upgrade, not Verstappen's upgrade, if Red Bull's upgrade worked and McLaren were behind Red Bull, that the video, the whole point of the video would be null and void. And now this race has happened, it is null and void. So sadly, there's no point in uploading that video, because again, the point I was making in that video is null and void. But I will be doing a video on Lando Norris after the season is done, because there is plenty to talk about in regards to him. But tomorrow, I am going to be doing a United States Grand Prix review, where I'll go back over what's happened in this Grand Prix. So make sure to check that out. That'll be uploaded probably this time tomorrow. And then next weekend, I will be live on Saturday night at, let me just check the timing of the session. I will be live at 8:30 p.m. UK time next Saturday night to do the qualifying watch along for the Mexico City Grand Prix. But I will not be doing a race watch along next week. And the reason that is because the race usually in Mexico is pretty boring. But also, you have to remember, guys, we've just completed the first part of the triple header. So I need to keep myself fresh going forward. And remember, I'm also at university. So, I don't want to absolutely burn myself out. So next weekend, I'll be doing a qualifying watch along, missing the race, but then the day after the race, I will upload a podcast reviewing the Mexico City Grand Prix. And then a week after that, I'll be doing a qualifying and race watch along for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix in Brazil. So plenty of content coming your way as we complete this 2024 season, and still plenty to be decided. But thank you guys so much for coming along this weekend for all the content. Been great to have you. Make sure to subscribe for more content like this before you go if you haven't already. Make sure as well to smash the like button before you go. Obviously does help the channel massively if you do that. And as well, make sure to check out some of the other content I've got on the channel. And make sure, if you want to, of course, to join the Discord server. Link in the description. A great place that is to keep up to date with all of the content and when I go live, when I upload videos, and also when I do content updates as to, when I'm going to be going live and what videos I'm going to be doing at certain points. But guys, it's been great to have you this weekend. And until my podcast tomorrow reviewing this US Grand Prix, it's been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.